What's up, Apex fans, and welcome along to week 2 of the GLL Masters Summer. My name is Onset, and alongside me is the beautiful, the glorious, the fantastic, the wonderful, of course, Dan Gaskin, to talk you through all of the action for Europe. And week 1 was dominated by Nasky, Strafe, and Dell. Dan, top of the leaderboards after week 1 of action.
They were indeed, not too far behind. There was Flavor of the Month, who were my favourite team to watch personally, just because of their attacking playstyle and the compositions that they offered. But week 1 was so much fun, and I've been kind of waiting for week 2 to come around, seeing how it was going to be. Of course, we got to watch North America go at it as well. You got to cast North America as well. But I think as a week's gone by, players had a little bit more time to practice with the latest patch. So I think we're going to start to see a little bit more of a solid style from most teams at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the meta has started to calm down ever so slightly. Week 1 was certainly, fun for the viewers. Maybe not as fun for the players, trying to work out what was working and what wasn't going to be working. But one thing that we have to take into consideration as well is the fact that we, of course, have the 2 divisions. We have the Bravo and the Alpha lobby that we kind of follow throughout these weeks. And we've had promotion and relegation, which means that we're going to have 5 new teams entering the lobby as well today.
Yes, we are going to have 5 new teams. And when we looked at the Bravo lobby last week, there were a few teams that we thought, okay, like teams like Na'Vi, who probably should have been in the Alpha lobby as well, but they didn't quite manage to get through with qualifiers. And we've been able to even out these lobbies a little bit more now into week 2. Of course, week 3 might throw a spanner in the works again because we've got the relegation and promotion this week. But I think a lot of those teams that maybe felt hard done by not getting through the qualifiers and getting into the Alpha lobby have found their way back in. And now it's about just getting the job done. Now they're in the big boy lobby.
Yeah, they've got a little bit of catching up to do, but, they're going to be able to get that done. The fact that there are, of course, double points available for the Alpha lobby. But we'll take a look at the tournament schedule to get everyone up to speed with what we're going to be seeing and what all the action is going to be going down. You can see we've already had week 1. Of course, we're here in week 2. We've got 3 more weeks of league play, and then we've got that last chance day on week 5. And then, of course, Dan, we have 2 days of grand final to decide who our champion will be in Europe.
Yes, 16 matches across those grand finals, so plenty of time to separate the big boys really from those teams that maybe have just been able to crawl their way into the finals. And this is what they're playing for. This is the prize pool and the point system, 100,000 total prize pool. And as Mark alluded to earlier, the point system is what we're used to seeing in your normal Apex format. However, there are double points available in the Alpha division. So if you are in that Bravo division, you're not going to be scoring as many points, and the overall points will matter when it comes to that week 4, because once you finish, you see whether you get into those finals or whether you're going to have to go into that last chance qualifier.
So that's what all of the teams are playing for. And of course, $100,000, the total prize pool for the GLL Master Summer. So plenty to be playing with and plenty to be playing for. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, as the weeks go by and as we mentioned in week number 1, we are going to see some of these changes that we saw come in start to settle down a little bit. And I think we've already started to see that ever since that week 1 of action where we saw teams running the likes of Revenant. We saw a lot more Crypto. We saw a lot of the legends we haven't seen kind of previously be at the top tier of Apex Legends finding their way in, but now we're starting to see it calm down a little bit, Dan. Some of those old comps are returning to action.
Yeah, and again, I think that just goes back to what people are comfortable playing. Like, you can't just suddenly start playing a new character. It's not that easy. It's not a quick transition, and sometimes you have to go back to what is tried and tested because it does work. The meta can slow down a little bit. We have seen differences from Europe to North America, but you can't just stick someone who's used to playing a Pathfinder on a Crypto. They're going to feel so restricted. They're not going to be able to do what they're used to doing. They can't just fly around, zip around the map, and jump on people. So in a way, yes, okay, Crypto can be so good for pushing in terms of what he offers and the vision he provides, but having a Pathfinder can just provide that extra bit of oomph when you want to push someone. Just someone can get aggressive, they can finish off kills. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a little bit more Pathfinder cropping up than we did in week 1.
And also, we've got to keep in mind as well, we are playing across 2 maps as well. So if you're a fan of World's Edge and Kings Canyon, you're going to be able to see both of those today in the European action as well as the North American tomorrow. This is the schedule for today. You can see plenty of matches to come, and the first 3, as I mentioned, will be on World's Edge before we move over to Kings Canyon. And we kind of like this setup, don't we, Dan? Because we feel like the last 3 matches being set on Kings Canyon gives you the chance to make up those points if you want to run a more aggressive comp.
Yeah, I was wondering whether week by week it would rotate and we'd have Kings Canyon first, but I'm okay with it staying this way because you're completely right. World's Edge, people are a lot more used to at the moment. It's a lot more calm, a lot more safe. People will just rotate a little bit early and then they'll wait, try and gatekeep, whereas Kings Canyon, people are still trying to relearn it, obviously with the new changes since the patch. So it does offer that possibility of getting a little bit more aggressive, looking for those kill points. And it means it just becomes a hectic match 4, 5, and 6. Maybe match 4, people are still a little bit kind of considerate with other teams being around them. But certainly last week, matches 5 and 6, they were just so fast-paced. And personally, I loved watching it.
Yeah, that match 6 was absolutely ridiculous last week, and this is how things ended up after week 1 was all said and done. The Alpha Division for the EMEA region then. Nasty Strafendale, like we mentioned, 60 points from placement, 36 kills to go alongside it, and no surprise to see they're top of the leaderboard with 132 points. But Flavor of the Month just in behind Pepega Gibbo, the team that you have been practicing all week to make sure that you can say, right, I'm excited for that, Dan. Then Triumph Gaming and Alliance in there in 5th place as well.
Pepega Gibbo, Pepega Gibbo, Pepega Gibbo. You can say it 3 times fast and it still works. You don't summon anyone. No one's going to come and attack you. You're fine. But you can see how well they did as well. Like, their placement points weren't great, but it was the fact they were just picking up so much kill points is why they were up in 3rd. And then we saw the usuals like Alliance. We expected them to be playing well, so they're still in the top 5. But unfortunately, we had teams relegated from the Alpha Division. YDN, Elite Gaming are the South African team that were in this. Execute, Fenerbahce Esports, and Lava City Boys. They struggled in this lobby, if I'm completely honest. So we'll see whether they do a little bit better in Bravo, and maybe we'll see them back in week 3, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, still a lot of action ahead of those teams as they find themselves in the Bravo Division. And speaking of which, here is the Bravo Division standings after week 1. And we should be looking at those top 5 spots because these teams will be joining the Alpha Division. SJP2, Dead Inside, Na'Vi, Vibin, and North, all powerhouse teams in the Apex Legends competitive scene. And super excited to see them back in action in that Alpha Division, Dan.
Some of these logos are incredible as well. I'm just scouting across them, and they get better and better as my eyes go across them. Flex Gang in particular, very impressive. But Weiger's just missing out by 3 points in the end. It was 3 placement points if you compare them to North. I think that's a shame because I think that they definitely have the potential to get into the Alpha lobby. But I think now that those other 5 teams have been promoted, they should be relatively comfortable in this week's play, and we should probably see them in week 3, but who knows? We never know what might happen. Those that were relegated from the Alpha Division might just stomp the Bravo Division this week, but I guess we'll see.
Still some really notable teams in there as well, still making to make their run into the Alpha Division. But this is going to be the Alpha Division lineup for today. And you look across it, Dan, and there really is no weak teams left in this lobby. It looks absolutely stacked. It's so difficult to call.
Yeah, you've got to try and find 5 teams there that are going to get relegated back into the Bravo. And of course, the overall points matter. So even if you are going to get relegated, you want to get relegated with a decent and healthy points total. When we saw Lava City Boys go down with just 8 points, they haven't made enough of an impact in Alpha Division. You really need to, if you're going to be relegated, you need to be on that cusp, like 36, 40 points, because then you're still outscoring the majority of the Bravo Division anyway, and you're still giving yourself a decent chance of getting to those finals. But yeah, like, just looking across it, I cannot point out 5 teams that I think are going to get relegated. There's those that I think might struggle to compete with some of the best, but I don't know. I really, really don't know, Mark.
Yeah, this is a tier 1 lobby for Europe. I mean, you're looking across at some of the teams that are involved and some of the teams that are, you know, going to be duking it out this week. And as you say, there's a few teams in there who might have just avoided the wooden spoon last week, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have an easy time this week. It's going to be even tougher for them to make that run and stay in the Alpha Division. I think from now on, we're kind of looking at staying in the Alpha Division as a battle in itself for all of these teams, not just getting those points on the board to push yourself towards the top of that leaderboard. But for Nasty Strafendale, they are the team who are currently top of the leaderboard, and they were super impressive last week, you have to say.
They were super impressive. They had a relatively slow start, but then they just started to pick it up match after match after match, and it was just their rotation, their ability to know when to be pushing teams, when to get aggressive, that really didn't surprise me. We knew they were capable of it, but that's what impressed me. Anyway, they weren't necessarily a team that was always rotating early and just gatekeeping. Instead, they were trying to take advantage of other teams that were in poor positions, and I always like seeing at least one team on the map do that, because it means that you can't afford to make those mistakes. Because if you're on the map, you position yourself badly, you know there's someone out there looking to try and take advantage of that. And that's exactly what Nasty Strafendale were doing.
Yeah, flavor of the month, obviously just in behind them as well. We should talk about that because there was a couple of big games for them, but there was also a couple of games where they managed to scrape some really, really vital placement points by being only down to their final player. Two of the teammates got wiped, and it was a case of ratting out to that top placement, and I think they got a second and a third from extremely disadvantageous positions. One on World's Edge, one on Kings Canyon. So they're showing that they know how to hide, they know how to play those placement points when they need to as well.
Yeah, you've got to have that one person on the team that is prepared to make that call as well. Say, yep, leave us. You're not going to try and go for any sort of revive here. You're not going to be getting us up. So instead, just try and rat this out. And you also have to have the player with the ability to rat it out. And the majority should at this point. But of course, which character you're playing is also going to be dependent on that as well. Some are better at ratting than others. Of course, if you're stuck on something like a Caustic, you might not be able to rat as well. A Gibraltar might not be able to rat as well because you're not going to be as nimble, not as quick. But certainly last week, Flavor of the Month, they were just phenomenal at doing so. And if they can pick up those same points today, if they can play the same way, then I can see them getting to top 2 again, or maybe even topping the overall leaderboards here.
Yeah, it's certainly a team to keep an eye out for here in week 2 of action. We're trying to get into the game as soon as we possibly can. As I say, we've got 6 games of action today. And I had a question for you, Dan, which is I think we need to kind of bring some more vocabulary into Apex Legends here, because we're always talking about ratting, being that last player alive and, you know, surviving for those placement points. But we go back to game 5 or 6, I think it was, on Kings Canyon in Europe, and we had a player up in the tree, I believe it was, for the majority of that game. It might have been North America, even if my memory corrects me. It was a long day of casting. But rats don't live in trees, Dan. So I put it to you. What do we call those players?
Well, we've got to have something that has the ability to get up a tree and stay there, but also something like a squirrel, maybe.
A squirrel? Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that. That's kind of same sort of vibe as a rat. Yeah, I'm cool with that. I was going to go with Toucan, but, you know, different minds. Different minds. But I mean, who are your teams to watch this week? Because we've talked about, you know, the teams who are at the top of the leaderboard. Alliance, maybe for me, are one of those teams to watch because they had a couple of really, really poor performances in the games. They had a couple of very good ones, of course. They had a win on World's Edge, but the consistency which has kind of separated them from a lot of teams in Europe just seemed to be missing a little bit last time.
Yeah, like, for example, on the other side as well, BDS Esport, they had, like, an amazing game 1, and we were like, okay, well, they're here to play, and then they just dropped off from matches 2 through 5, and we didn't really know if they were even going to stay up because they had dropped off so much, but they were, I think they finished 14th, yeah, they finished 14th in the end, so they are one of the danger teams. When we look at teams that are probably going to be in that relegation talk, we should probably be looking at the likes of BDS, and they won't want that. They won't want to be in that discussion, considering the games they did have when they played well. So I'd be keeping an eye on BDS. Team Elitist, they were 15th. They were the team closest to being relegated, and even though they had a little bit of a points difference from 16th, again, another team that we have to keep an eye on. And then my third team would be Bodyguards, just because they had a little bit of a different composition last week, and they were kind of trying things and testing things, so I'm interested to see what they offer this week.
And also, I just need to point out as well that obviously Fenerbahce finding their way down into the Bravo division means that there will be no clutch Tinky Winky Finky moment. You know, we'll have to save that. Unfortunately, we won't have it live on stream, but I'm sure if someone's watching the Bravo lobbies, watching some streams and sees that happen, that they're going to send it over. So super excited to see that happen. But what have Nasty Strafe and Dell got to do this week to stay on top and maybe even extend that lead? Is it a case of more of the same, or do you think that maybe with some other teams going back to some more traditional comps like we've seen previously, they're going to have to adjust with that as well?
I mean, you have to adjust to every single lobby, and they'll want to feel things out for the first game, maybe the second game as well, because you would have started to feel things out last week, and you would have started to get used to drop locations and who's landing where and when you're rotating, who you're running into. We've just introduced 5 new teams now to this lobby. They could really throw a spanner in the works. They could suddenly drop on you. They could drop in a different location. They could be really a detriment to your rotation. So I think Nasty Strafe and Dell, they just have to be a little bit careful. They need to make sure that they are following the same kind of guidelines they were in week 1. And they, to be fair, if they play the same way, if they play that way where they take advantage of other people's poor positioning, then I think they'll be fine, because they're just winning fights. If you can win your fights, you're going to be okay. They don't put themselves in a position where they get third-partied often. They take fights and they take them quick. If they're not winning that fight in, like, I don't know, 30 seconds, they get out of dodge and they look to rotate instead. They're very smart with their play, and if they do more of the same, they should be successful.
I'm also excited to see how that game 5 and 6 does go, because if it's anything like last week where those teams down at the bottom are, they're desperate to get those points on the board to avoid relegation and going down to the Bravo division, where of course their points are going to be halved from what they would get in the Alpha division. We do see some hyper aggressive gameplay potentially coming out of those teams, which really can not only mix up things that are happening at the bottom of the table, of course, but if they get one of those fights and it goes their way early on against one of those teams who's at the top of the leaderboard, it really can shake things up.
Could be a confidence booster as well. If you know you've eliminated one of the better teams in the lobby, then you're going to be feeling it and you'll say, okay, well, maybe we can push this next team. If we've just knocked out the top dogs of the lobby, then why not? Why not push fights? Why not just look for more kills and get these KP? Because at the end of the day, when we look at the leaderboards and we look at week 1, kill points mattered so much, as we know they do in Apex Legends competitive, and even more so when you've got the double points available. If you are just going to look for those placement points and if you're just going to be waiting, then you might find yourselves not picking up enough points to get to the finals. You have to be looking for those kill points as well, but you have to be intelligent in doing so. If you just look for them like randomly and you just push unnecessarily, then you're going to be punished by other teams, because every push is going to be difficult. Like with a lobby like this, you're not going to have any easy fights per se. So you want to take those fights tactically, maybe look at what composition you're going up against. If there's a Revenant there, then you might say, okay, maybe we don't push this, maybe we wait for them to push someone else and then we dive on them and look for the third party. All these different things that the in-game leaders are going to have to be talking about, having to be considering with their team. But ultimately, I think that this is going to be an exciting week and will probably shape weeks 3 and 4. I think this will be the most kind of standard meta we're going to get now here in week 2. Week 1, I think, was a toss-up and we were starting to see loads of different things, but like you said earlier, I think things are slowing down now here in week 2.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And I think as well, one thing we should mention is I'm not expecting to see much contention off of the drop as well, because, all of these teams that are now in the Alpha division are extremely established teams in the European region and the EMEA region. So they kind of got that, they know where each other drop. They're comfortable with where they drop, and they don't want to be contesting because of the fact that they want an elongated game. They want to get into position to fight for that end game. So I don't think we're going to see that as much, but that does mean that we're going to get down to that ring 4, that ring 5, and we're going to see more and more teams potentially alive here, which is where we really are going to see how some of these teams are outstanding in that end game, and some of those teams that maybe need to improve a little bit from what they've done so far.
Yeah, we didn't get to see like super late game circles last week, certainly in Europe anyway. It didn't go down to those kind of nail-biting moments where it's 7 teams in like a tiny little circle. Instead, it was quite a wide circle, but I think that was more down to where actually these zones were. Like the circles were in quite open areas. There wasn't really many nooks and crannies to hide in. People obviously found any nooks and crannies they could in those circles, but we'll see what happens this week. That's part of the fun of any battle royale, right? You've got that extra element of RNG of where these circles are going to go, who's going to be predicting them successfully, who's going to see these kind of patterns beforehand, and that's what makes a good team as well. Any team that notices those patterns and they say, okay, it's ended here before, we think it's going to end here, they can position themselves and they can be in a phenomenal spot to actually take the game.
Well, good news is I believe we're ready to get into our game number 1. The lobby is ready. All the players are in and everyone is raring to go. So as soon as we can jump into the action, we will do. Dan Gaskin, I have one question for you, which is what team do you want to follow here in match number 1? I mean, in my opinion, I know you haven't asked it, but I think we've got to start with Nasky, Strafe and Del, right? The team who are top of the leaderboard. I
mean, I feel like if I go anything against you now, then I just look like a bad person, don't I? So yes, go for Nasky, Strafe and Del, shall we, Mark?
You can have your own opinion. It's fine.
I want to see what one of the...
As long as it's exactly the same as...
I want to see what one of the Bravo teams will do, or the teams that came from Bravo that are now in Alpha. A team like Na'Vi, for example, I want to see how they perform in this lobby. So I'm going to be keeping a keen eye on how they're going to be doing in this one.
Well, I did say that the game was on its way. I might have told you a little porcupine there, so hopefully we can get back into that game as soon as possible. We can get game number 1 kicked off. But World's Edge, as we say, is where we're going to be starting. And this is where we saw some of the more consistent gameplay. This is the map that people have been playing for a long, long time now. And Kings Canyon, as we mentioned earlier, has had those changes in POIs and has had some adjustments. And with the new meta and everything we've talked about, has been a little bit more unpredictable. But World's Edge is where we kind of get a feeling for things. This is where people are feeling like home. And here we go. Team number 20. Matt, it's going to be Strafe, Del, and Nasky. I'm so used to saying Nasky, Strafe, and Del that reading it in any sort of other order throws me off. But game number 1's underway here in the GLL Masters Summer, week number 2 of action. And it is our team who are top of the leaderboards who are going to be dropping first.
Yep, and they're dropping close enough. One of them has gone and kind of ego dropped a little bit further away from the map, just see if he can get himself a little bit of loot, but they are most certainly not going to be wanting any early fights when they haven't been able to pick up any weaponry. But as soon as they have found anything that they can fight with, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to take any early game fights because they're going to be confident in their shot, or at least they were last week, and they are in competitions that I've watched previously. But of course, every lobby is going to be a little bit different, and maybe the first match of the day, you want to ease yourself in, and you want to take things a little bit slower.
Of course, one of the beautiful things about dropping over here at Fragment East and running that Pathfinder is the fact that you are going to have access to that beacon on that broken building. So they're going to have access to not only the first circle, but of course the second one as well. So if we can pop back over there, when we do see that beacon going to be hit, that's going to give us all the information we need to see where those rotations are occurring. And it looks like it is going to be a fairly central circle, slightly pulling towards the north, maybe around that train station ending there down just to the south of Survey Camp. You can see it pinged here. And you're going to see teams making their way across, and a pretty good, I would say, a fairly comfortable zone here for all teams that have landed in Fragment.
This is a good circle for the majority of the map, really. Fairly certain everyone can rotate into it somewhat successfully. Maybe those teams that have dropped to the southern side of the map might struggle a little bit more than others. Like, for example, those in Dome and Lava City are probably going to have to come together, and then they're going to be pushing into the guys at Sorting Factory as well. But that's something they will know is a possibility on any circle. Like, even if the circle is down by Sorting Factory and Dome, they may have to push that way. So they'll certainly know who's going to be landing where. Like you said, all these teams are veterans in the scene right now. They know exactly where other people are going to be dropping. You can see how spread out everyone is. We haven't had any fights. We haven't lost anyone early on. Completely different to the first week of affairs in Europe. And again, I think that's just down to a couple of those teams being from different regions, a couple of spanners thrown in the works. Like we had the South African team, for example, that maybe some people hadn't played against before, and their drop location might have been a little bit different to what they're used to seeing. But everyone here in their comfort zone now, and we'll see how it plays out, who's going to end up in that first engagement.
And we've already seen the power of the Pathfinder beacon as well, because, you know, from that first circle, my prediction was maybe towards that train station. You saw a couple of teams already trying to rotate as early as possible from Fragment West towards that train station to try and set up without that Pathfinder. And you've already seen that shift to the west side of World's Edge here around Fragment East. So teams are going to have to be aware of that, and that's going to give the advantage to those Pathfinder teams. But Bodyguard's one of those teams who had a pretty consistent week last week, and certainly going to be looking to improve week on week here in the Alpha lobby here, just around Hot Springs and the area just to the west side of course, Harvester. But Nasty Strafe and Dell here, you can see set up on the top of essentially where they landed. They've got spare armors to work with as well, and for the team who are top of the leaderboard coming into it after week one, this is a perfect first circle for them.
Bodyguard's still going that kind of different composition as well. Like Revenant plus like two very defensive characters is not what you're used to seeing, and that's why I was excited to see what they had to offer last week, but more so this week. Certainly last week they didn't get enough kills. They only had 11 between them, and yes, they were just about able to survive. They finished 12th in the end of the week, which isn't bad, but at the same time, when you add now 5 really big teams from the Bravo lobby, you're looking at maybe that 12th place becoming a 16th or a 17th place, and then suddenly you could be in danger of being relegated. So I want to see them utilize this composition to their best ability. Like, get yourself into the circle early, rotate when you can, and then get yourself just hunkered down, because that's really what you've got with that composition. The fact that you've got your Gibraltar to work with, you've got your Watson as well. So we'll see what happens.
On north, here on top of Epicenter on this ridge, which is such a powerful position to be holding down. You have all of the high ground to work with, and when you've got a charge rifle in the hands of Tashin as well, then he's going to be able to stop all of these teams rotating in from Epicenter and from the north of the map. So north here just set up. Looks like they're going to try and keep some teams out of that second circle as it does close in here on ring number 1. And they're in a good position to potentially pick up KP. But the beautiful thing about when this circle does end around Fragment is you have so much real estate in Fragment, different levels of buildings, so many buildings in that area that it wouldn't surprise me to see a pretty high amount of squads still left as we approach those end circles.
And I think for that reason entirely is why we're seeing still so many Watsons being used. And like, when the question was asked of, are we going to see more aggressive compositions? Are we going to see more Revenants come into the equation? But Watson is just so powerful when you are in buildings. And when you have that much real estate available, when you get circles that are going to be playing out like this, she's just absolutely phenomenal to have on your side. But still, no squads down, still no one down at all 60 players alive in the lobby as we get further and further into this next circle. Round 1 is closing in 2 minutes. A lot of the teams have the information with the Pathfinder as to where this next circle is going to be as well, or even the circle after that, should I say. But it's certainly North looking to try and gatekeep at the moment. They're pinging all the locations of where they might be pushed from, and they are keeping a keen eye to see if anyone is going to be trying to sneak up on them from behind as well.
We are seeing Watson coming back into that popular slot. Obviously, Watson was pretty much the most popular pick out of all players alongside Wraith, and all characters, I should say, alongside Wraith in competitive teams composition, because of what she does offer with those fences and, of course, that generator. And there has been some nerfs, we have to say, to that generator. Now it has that cooldown, and you got to be a little bit more selective on when you're going to be dropping that and when you're going to be using that to get those shields back up. And, of course, also being able to eat up all of those projectiles coming your way. But Flavor of the Month, they want to be the projectile themselves, and they're going to be flying into a fight here. You can see them trying to get aggressive and running the same composition that we did see from them in week number 1. But the only issue is it looks like the team in front of them are desperately trying to run away and maybe just burn down the time on this totem that they're using. But Flavor of the Month, they're not having any of that, and it's Outsiders who are going to come under pressure here. Taylor takes down 1, and now they're going to be trying to chase down these players as well. But you can see the shots coming in from Fragment as well. It looks like a lot of teams have already managed to rotate in early, and it looks like they might have had that totem destroyed as well.
And the rest of Outsiders, well, they do not fancy this fight whatsoever. Losing the Pathfinder is never great, because Pathfinder can be so good at jumping on anything that the Wraith initiates. So it's always a shame to see the Pathfinder eliminated first, because they have such a good exit strategy as well. But probably had been used the grapple earlier on, so he wasn't able to escape successfully. But it looks like Mistral is Katja here is at least considering maybe trying to get the beacon here and see if he can get the res, but it looks like Flavor of the Month are aware of it, and they want to ensure that that is not going to be possible.
Yeah, Flavor of the Month are just chilling here as we see one player just nip past, and Outsiders have got to be super quiet here as the team is going to be rotating in front of them. And it looks like the silence is the answer, and I'm not talking about the Revenant. I'm talking about not making any noise whatsoever here as Kaida now decides to pop those meds once Flavor of the Month have managed to sneak past, and unfortunately for them, not take the position of the Watson. And you can see they're desperately trying to find where those last 2 players are for Outsiders, but at the moment, it's a little bit of a Houdini act here.
Has been able to recover it as well, so fair play. Mistral got completely out of the way, didn't want anything to do with it, but Kaida obviously said, look, I think I can wait here. I'm probably not going to be able to escape if I do run anyway, so was just been able to find a cranny to sit in. As we move over to Gambit, and they've already had one of their players down, and that means that they have to really consider as to whether they're going to be picking him up. They've been able to portal him out, so at least that's successful, but they are still moving with one player on the knees. Can they pick up the Pathfinder? That's the real question. Watson fences come down to try and defend, but it looks like they do not want to just go for this res, because they are being pushed by several other teams that have got them in their sightlines.
Yeah, an alliance of that team who are trying to hunt them down, I believe, playing on the edge of circle here. You can see that Gibraltar as well, and always interesting for me to see a Wraithless composition, and that's exactly what Alliance are running, and they are a team who like to mix up their composition. They were the team that really started to reintroduce Caustic into competitive play in the ALGS, so good to see them once again trying to adapt, trying to be creative, and unfortunately for them, they can't get the finish onto Leogri, so Gambit will be back up to their full complement of players.
Gambit have done really well there, though, to escape, utilising Wraith's portal very effectively. As Flavor of the Month, again, I'm going to get aggressive with this totem, seeing if they can find anyone over here. But at the moment, it doesn't look like they'll be able to get anyone down, but they have done some real damage. Rugby has been down, Zippeth has been able to take him as well, and they're still getting aggressive, our Flavor of the Month. They definitely want to get in the face of these teams. This is what they did last week as well. They just have a never say die attitude. They are more than happy to get in people's faces.
Well, when you got that Revenant ult, I mean, you got that totem, why not? I mean, it's essentially a free push at this point in Apex Legends, and Flavor of the Month looking to take advantage of that. But I think players are getting more and more wise to the Revenant ult now and how to try and counteract that. And essentially what it is get your skates on and just try and outrun that timer. As we are going to see Alliance now trying to get aggressive on that team that was positioned up top. But it looks like for them, there's going to be no one home, but they could potentially hit this beacon once again. and look for that next ring, and that's exactly what Hackis is going to do here on the Pathfinder. And we're going to see that one pop up, which is not only going to give them the information, but us the information as well. And you can see it's probably going to be pulling outside of Fragment here. So all of these teams you can see on the overhead map there in such a confined area, 20 of them still remaining in this game, are going to have to fight outside at some point, probably around that ring 3, ring 4 time of this game.
Yeah, it's always going to be different when it does end around Epicenter as well, just because of the sheer height difference that is available and the different fights you're going to have to take from potential low ground if you are pushing in and rotating late. Whereas those who have been able to get in early, they've been able to set up, they're going to have a very successful time at gatekeeping those that are going to be pushing in. But still, 20 squads remaining. This is more like, this is what we're used to. I think last week was a little bit different, and we had a spanner thrown in the works for sure, but only 2 players have been eliminated so far. And I think this is what we've come to expect. Teams that are a little bit more comfortable with where other players are going to be dropping, where the teams are going to be rotating, and just not taking any unnecessary fights. I've said that the teams that do have the Revenant have been the ones that have been looking for those engagements. They've been the ones that have been looking to try and get those kill points. But you're completely right. People are just running away from Revenant. As soon as you hear that totem or you see one of those players totemed up, you get the hell out of there. You just got to make sure you're not running into another team when you do so.
You can see Denze here for SJP2, the team who were promoted into the Alpha Division. Incredibly talented lineup. Has the Kraber in his hands. He's desperately just trying to find a shot to try and get it down and then probably try and initiate a push for his team. But at the moment, no one's given him that angle. So you can see him trying to relocate. But the problem is, when you've got 20 squads remaining in such a tight area, it means that finding those angles is going to be more and more difficult because there's always going to be a team trying to locate their crosshairs onto you, watching different angles. And if he does hit this shot, it's going to be an impressive one for sure.
Well, Papega Gibbo. I've said it correctly 4 times now, so I'm going to give myself a pat on the back. They were one of the teams that showed aggression as well last week. They picked up an incredible amount of kills. They actually finished with 31 total kills, which was the same amount as SJP2 managed in the Bravo lobby, by the way. But their placement points did let them down ever so slightly. They still were able to finish in 3rd, but they just didn't have the same amount of placement points that we saw from Nasky Strafe and Dell and Flavor of the Month. They actually had half the placement points that Flavor of the Month did. So if they can add those placements alongside those kills, there's no reason why they can't be topping these lobbies as well.
Alliance now being forced to retreat, and you can see Hackis is going to have to use not only his ult, but also his Q to get out of dodge here, because IPN has been dropped. And look at the pain that's coming on to Vaves as well. He's trying to get out of dodge, but all these buildings are pretty much taken at the moment. So it looks like Alliance are really struggling here to find a little bit of an area to locate themselves and heal up. They've lost IPN, they've lost their Caustic, and as we know, if you can get that Caustic to the end game, which is pretty much Alliance's tried and trusted technique here in Apex Legends, that's where they have their success. So getting IPN down is huge for the rest of the lobby.
Yeah, I mean, Alliance's composition is completely set up for getting to the endgame lobby. Denze is going to have shots here, but he goes down. Alliance were able to spot him out. He had 2 players in his sightlines, but he just wasn't quick enough, and he got shot from the right-hand side. So Alliance have been able to pick up 1. They can go and get aggressive here. They can get the kill point to follow, and they can pick up the weapons if they would like. Hackis is going to pick himself up the Kraber, 7 bullets to work with, but they're not going to be able to get the Caustic at this rate. They just need to be thinking about rotations, Mark. They need to find themselves in a safe spot, but they are in such a difficult position at the moment because they can be seen from so many angles. But it seems like they might have found a little bit of a home here behind the ice, but with gold armor to work with, a Kraber in the hand, they could position themselves nicely. They just need to find somewhere to home.
Yeah, now we're really starting to see the action kick off, because the hotel is fully booked at the moment here in Fragment East, and if you want a room, you're going to have to fight for it. Kuya now on the scout, does manage to put some damage down, but I'm looking at the feed here, and LG are starting to pick up some kills themselves, and they weren't on the best armor situation as well. So for them, kills at this point in the game are absolutely huge. They have lost Rugby, however, getting some loot that they can work with towards the end game is going to be super important. You can see the gold bag being transferred over to the Gibraltar player as well with that quick res in the bubble. Very, very smart idea coming in here from LG, making the most of the loot that they've managed to pick up.
And usually you'd probably be thinking, all right, well, we're okay. We've still got 2 of our squad, but for the majority, we have some very healthy teams at the moment. Like, most still have all 3. 8 players have been eliminated. Only 1 squad has gone down. So we're seeing, what, maybe 5 other teams that have lost a player, so everyone else in the lobby is going to have a full health squad. You can see that the circle just north of Fragment East here, and those teams that are all the way over to the west at Fragment West, well, that's going to be the hardest job for them. They're going to have to try and get over the bridge, over the lava, but they're going to be gate-kept completely, so they need to start making a game plan soon, whether that's a Wraith Portal, whether that's a Gibby Bubble. You just need to have something that's going to get you into this next circle. Or you have to push one of these teams that are close to you, take some kill points, take any sort of weaponry they have, any sort of ability to heal yourself up as well, and then maybe you can find your way into the circle once you pick some stuff up.
Yeah, well, Na'Vi have managed to pick up their first kill points of the game, and it's going to be onto Flavor of the Month. So, arguably the most aggressive team in the lobby lose that engagement and will be one of the first teams to drop, as we see another battle going down here, as Vibin, another team who were promoted from the Bravo division, are trying to get involved in the action, and they managed to sneak into the cafe here, which is, of course, going to be one of those areas which is inside that next circle, but it looks like they're going to have to try and fight for it. They have the bottom floor, but they're going to have to fight here for control of the total building.
Vibin actually had the most kills across both lobbies last week. They had 39 kills in total, but of course that was in the Bravo lobby. That is going to be a little bit different than this Alpha lobby. The Revenant has gone down at this point, so it's going to be up to the rest of the 2 players to try and do something. Arcstar is available just to try and gain a little bit of information, see if he can stun for his teammate to push in. But dead inside, they're down to 2 as well, so it's a 2v2 fight here. And there's the res. So now it's a 2v3, but they hear the res, so they are going to push up the stairs. They are going to get aggressive. DSPL goes down, but Stanny is able to heal, it looks like. He gets the bat off, and that is massive, Mark.
Yeah, Disbelief going down is going to be huge, and Sadyama here as the Watson is trying to do what he can to just slow this push down. As we go back over to Nasky, Strafe and Dell here, one of the only teams who do have some solid real estate to play with as far as a building is concerned, as in 14 seconds we are going to see round 4 close, and we're going to have to see some teams forced out of those buildings surrounding them. And for Nasky, Strafe and Dell, they're just going to be using that scout, trying to pick off those players who are rotating in towards the circle, as we're seeing all of the ults being used, all of the action now starting to kick off in the lobby.
Yeah, 7 squads are down now, just 13 remaining. BDS are looking to see if they can punish anyone who is going to be pushing into this circle, but Rimmer does have to be very careful here. Needs to make sure he's with his team. Gibraltar's going to be tagged down for 44, and now Nerzi, can he get any decent shots off with this Peacekeeper? Got plenty of bullets to work with, he's just going to bat up, but BDS are having to back off ever so slightly because they know they can be pushed from both angles at the moment, and they just need to find any cover that's possible.
We just went from 18 teams to 9 teams in around 20 seconds or so. So you can see how much action went down. The kill feed just appeared. It was almost as if I'd forgotten the kill feed existed until that point, but it lit up on the right-hand side of your screens as dead inside. They're inside, but they're not dead as yet. As Stanny, he's trying to get the revive on a teammate using that knockdown shield to his advantage to try and block that door, but here comes the push, so he's going to have to use that R9 to try and back that player off. And North, who have been sat up here on the top of this little crater on this top of this cliff around the epicenter part of the area, are in the perfect position to potentially not only pick up KP here, Dan, but looking at where that next circle is going, they are in prime position to win game number 1 here. Yeah,
definitely a game-winning position. As long as they don't get pushed from 2 teams at the same time, they need to, whilst lay down fire from this cliff, they just need to make sure that they don't put themselves in between 2 teams. So make yourselves known for sure, make it so it's not easy for anyone to push you, but at the same time you don't want to leave yourself too vulnerable from either side. So they need to make sure they're just scouting both areas, as everyone else now just has to try and find their way into this circle. Nasky, Strafe and Dell, they might have had an easy game so far, but now they're going to have to work their way into this circle. They are going to find themselves behind a rock here, but can they get seen from anyone else? It looks like they might be okay, so Dell is going to communicate to the teammate it should be okay to come through the portal, as we're down to just 5 squads now, Mark.
Yeah, you can see North here just commanding the map at the moment here on World's Edge, just working this high ground and trying to prevent any teams from pushing them. They've got the Mastiff to work with. They've got some pretty decent armors on their back as well, as Gambit are one of those teams who are managed to sneak their way into a position here in this next circle, but they're just coming under fire, and here comes the pressure from above as well. And for Artico and the Eva, he's going to have to do as much damage as he can to force that team off. And of course, that team is going to be North, but it's not going to be enough. North move in, take out Gambit, and that is going to be all the loot they could want moving towards this endgame.
Down to just 4, Alliance just down to just 1 member as well. North very much in the power position right now. Just the 1 elimination for RPR, but they have the vantage point, they have all of the sight lines, but they just need to decide when they're going to be pushing, because that Circle is going to be coming in. Triumph have a lot of armor to work with, but they're just in one of the worst positions, the furthest point you could be away from the next circle. So they just need to choose their time effectively here. At least they have all 3 members.
Yeah, they have 3 members alive. I think one of those players you could see there was a rat as well, so a last player alive for one of the squads still involved. Triumph trying to do the damage that they can and essentially just trying to survive here for as long as they possibly can before maybe they look for a Wraith portal into an area where they can fight a little bit more successfully. But the game at the moment is in North's hands. Nasky, Strafe, and Dell, our top team from week number 1, still involved in this last 4 squads as well. But they're going to have to make their way across some open ground as well. Probably into potentially the crosshairs of both Triumph and North.
Well, it was Alliance that had the rat that has gone down. Haki's falls and down to just 3 now. So North will just wait at this point. The circle's coming in, and it is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel at this point. But there's going to be the fight down low. We knew this was a possibility. Nasky, Strafe, and Dow get involved with Triumph. Triumph should triumph over them, though. Some decent shots. One goes down, and how on earth are they doing this? JMW just about survives, but this is not going to be enough for them. The circle is going to come in. It's going to be champion for North. They didn't have to do anything at that point. They just sat and watched everything unfold. It was so easy. They had the position in the end, and what a game it was for North.
Hey, congratulations to North. They will win your game number 1 here in week 2. And of course, North coming from the Bravo division as well, Dan. So not a bad first game in the Alpha division for North. Congratulations to them. Fantastic stuff, holding down that fantastic position on that cliff on Epicenter. But that fight towards the end, it was always going to happen. North, as you say, just had to watch, just had to wait for those teams to engage as that circle was closing. And then it was just a case of moving in and finishing off those weak players.
Yeah, North, they played it really well. As I said, when they found themselves in that position a little bit earlier, when there were still, like, 9 squads left, they could have got aggressive on a couple of teams, could have gone for kill points, but instead they just played it smart, like anyone should have done in that position. They held their angles, they made sure they weren't being flanked, they made sure they weren't being pushed from behind, they kept their sight lines, they just were a real nuisance to especially Triumph, who were stuck behind that rock for so long. Triumph were their biggest threat, realistically. They had full 3 members up, they had red armor to work with as well, and they just couldn't get close enough to even do anything with it, unfortunately for them. And then, of course, ran into Nasky, Strafe, and Dell, or just 2 of Nasky, Strafe, and Dell anyway. But it was a great game by North, a much slower game than what we saw from week 1, but it came to be expected when you get a more of a consistent lobby in terms of the teams have played against each other, they've scrimmed against each other, and they all know where everyone's landing.
Yeah, you can see at the end there as well, I think North were heavily involved in that battle. Some grenades being thrown to just make their life so simple in that final fight. Just had to drop down and I think finish off those weak players. Couldn't even get the armor swaps off to make that somewhat of a challenge. But, I mean, it just shows the depth that we have, not only in the Alpha division, but in the Bravo division from week 1. Teams coming up and, you know, coming in and winning game number 1 here. You can't say enough about the depth of Apex Legends competitives in the EMEA region.
And that's what I meant by a couple of teams that were probably frustrated not to qualify into the Alpha Division from week 1. And if there's a team like North, for example, that miss out on finals, but I don't think they will after a performance like that, they might be kicking themselves a little bit that they didn't get into the Alpha Lobby week 1, that they missed out on those double points. But the fact that they were able to do that is going to be a huge kind of point maker for them. Double points, victory, decent kill points from them as well. Not the most kill points, but still plenty to work with. So I'm really excited to see what North have to offer in the next game, because what happens when they're one of the teams that has to get into the circle late? How are they going to react to that situation? Because everything kind of played out for them because of their positioning. Don't get me wrong, they played it amazing, but that game kind of just, it was handed to them as soon as that circle moved onto that cliff's edge, and they were rubbing their hands together saying, okay, yeah, this should be an easy one.
Yeah, I think it actually surprised a few teams where that end circle was. Not one I've seen in a while, but we're going to take a quick break now as we prepare for game number 2, which is, of course, on its way. Game number 1, though, went to North. We'll be back in just a few seconds. And game number 2 is just around the corner. Of course, it is the GLL Masters Summer, and of course, this man right next to me is Daniel Gaskin. Game 1 went to North. Dan, the positioning was everything for them. It was somewhat of a strange end circle. Well, not one that I've seen in a while, where that high ground really was just the deciding factor.
Yeah, North were able to win 2 of their lobbies in Bravo, so we knew what they were capable of. We knew how many kills they were able to get as well, but I think they would have definitely been rubbing their hands together as soon as that circle ended up on that cliff edge where they already were residing. No one else was able to get up there with them. No one was behind them. They only had to focus on in front of them in a certain radius, so they were very comfortable. But they did not finish top of the leaderboards because of kill points. Triumph Gaming were the kill leaders. I saw that as they went into the last fight. 10 kills for them, as well as the 18 placement points, has them at the top with 38. Remember, you get double points when you are in the Alpha lobby as well. And then Nicely Strafe and Dell still finishing up in 3rd, so they're still continuing their performances from last week. And then still some of these big teams, Papega, Gibbo, Alliance still performing well, but at the bottom, this was the big discussion we were having before we started, Mark. Who were going to be the teams that were going to be struggling? Well, Flavor of the Month is not a team we were expecting to see down there. Vibin as well, one of the promoted teams that had so many kills in Bravo lobby, they struggled in that particular game too. The Team Elitist is maybe one of the teams that I was expecting to see in those relegation spots, but of course it's only game 1, so anything can still happen.
And interesting for me as well, the fact that Vibin and Flavor of the Month, 2 teams who are running Revenant as well. So obviously, it's only game 1, and it's only a small pool of data to be working with. Of course, we should take that into consideration, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see if those teams can change things up a little bit, or if we are seeing teams finding out a way to counter that Revenant ult, like I talked about a little bit in game number 1. So game number 2, of course, is going to be where we see that leaderboard settle a little bit more. And Na'Vi, they're in 10th place as well, one of those teams who got promoted. But what a result there for North in game number 1. You know, back into the Alpha lobby. The fact that they were the last team to be promoted as well. They were 5th place in that Bravo division. That's got to be a huge confidence boost for them, right?
Absolutely. I think they know what they're capable of, and they knew that they could do some damage into this lobby. But to start your week off with a victory and to find yourself 2nd in the leaderboard is going to give you that just extra little bit of a cushion. They'll be saying, all right, now, even if we have 5 pretty terrible games, we're still going to be there or thereabouts. And we look at the teams that were relegated last week and the points totals they had. So the bottom 5, 32 was 16th place. Above that was 46. So around that 32, 36 points mark is where people are being relegated. They've already achieved that in game 1, so they can feel somewhat comfortable after the first match.
Well, North are going to be the team that we follow on the drop here. Didn't quite catch which direction the ship was going in, but they're going to be landing around the Fragment area and actually a little no-name area just to the south of Fragment. So interesting to see. It looks like the rest of North are actually going to be moving towards Overlook. But Flavor of the Month, the team who didn't maybe have the hottest of starts in game number 1, still sticking with that Revenant composition, something that brought them so much success last week. But we are actually going to see a little bit of fighting going on early here, and it's over at the Geyser between Vibin and Vibin. It's now just down to Joke V2, who's going to be the last man alive, and he's only got a Sentinel to work with. So difficult start here, as it looks like he's going to be the last man alive for his team, and he might have to decide whether to fight or just dip out.
It's going to be very much a solo vibe from this point onwards. He is not going to find himself in a good spot. Maybe he'll be able to circle back around and pick the banners up and potentially get a resurrect. Who knows? We'll see what happens, but the revive comes through for Big Vam, and they want to get involved in this. They want the early kill points. The Revenant is so weak now. This should be it. Yeah, Vibin eliminated then after a tough first game, and we spoke about the Revenant. We spoke about how, like, you've got these aggressive compositions. Well, the first Revenant comp has gone down early in the game, and unfortunately for them, they just didn't win the 50-50 on the drop.
Yeah, it looks like that might have been a little bit of a change-up of drop, or maybe one team there wasn't happy with the fact that their drop was having to be split around the Geyser. So, as you say, unfortunately for Vibin, they will be watching the rest of this game through the spectator mode. But 19 squads now remaining as we do lose our first team. Flavor of the Month here over towards Lava City. A couple of Ultic cells being pinged for them on the map as well, you can see. But the most important thing is that Pathfinder beacon is showing us exactly where that second circle, is going to be. And it could be a potential very similar finish to what we saw in one of our games from week number 1 down. Just up on that hill, that little building is going to be the prime estate for these teams to try and get a hold of.
So bodyguards would love to get into a position where they can set up with the Wattson, have the Gibby available for them as well, and then utilize Revenant to push teams that are getting aggressive on them. But they're already having a little bit of a confrontation here, right dead center. But Legit Lolly, very, very weak, needs to back off, and it's going to be major pushes that are going to be the team that are actually going to be looking to try and take them down potentially here, unless they just feel like they would rather rotate instead. They have been silent, so they are just going to back off, and it looks like they don't want to take this fight for now. Don't want to take any unnecessary fights, especially when you know there is a Revenant on the opposite side and they can potentially push for somewhat free. But I guess the teams that we do need to be looking at are those Revenant teams. We've got Bodyguards, of course, and Flavor of the Month. Two squads are running that Revenant. And if you're going to have the aggressive composition, you kind of want the lobby to be a little bit more open. You want to be able to push people who are going to be vulnerable in spaces where they haven't been able to set up and defend themselves. But that just wasn't the case in match number 1. Everyone was able to rotate very safely. There was so many buildings to work with. There was plenty of places and objects for them to hide behind that really we didn't see Revenant utilize whatsoever. So we'll see whether there can be something a little bit different, and maybe the Circle will offer up a chance for more aggression from the sides that are running the Revenant.
Yeah, difficulty for Flavor of the Month as well, as they probably had one of the longest distances to rotate in the lobby, as they obviously land over at Lava City, so they had to move right down from the southern side of the map towards Fragment, towards Epicenter, so not really an opportunity for them to get involved in any fights or gatekeeps any teams who are going to be ahead of them. But one team who's in a fantastic position is Triumph. They had a big game number 1 as far as points was concerned, and in my opinion, they are in the nicest building that you can get your hands on right now. Up on this height, you can see they've got it Watsoned up already. They've got the gen down. And for them, looking across their armors as well, they are in a prime position to have another big game here.
Triumph set up 10 kills is what they had in the previous game. As there is confrontation here, it's Na'Vi who are getting in the faces. There's going to be down to 18 squads now as Cleave will fall. It's going to be Dead Inside taken out of the game alongside Vibin. Still, Na'Vi wants some more of this, and they will get the cleanup on that one player. They'll be able to revive as well. So even though they weren't able to get the full squad wipe, at least they were able to pick up kill points. Remember, kill points are doubled in the Alpha lobby as well. And major pushes find themselves with just down to the one player. Rill is going to retreat, though. And he wants to find somewhere to rat out, but it is going to be a long, old game to rat.
Luminosity once again find themselves in a pretty decent position as far as posturing on the map is concerned and where that circle is going to be moving to. The only issue for them, again, white armors across the board here for LG. So similar position to what they found themselves in last time on game number 1 when they were in the building, to the west of Fragment, when they're going to have to take a fight. They're going to have to try and maybe get a third party and look to take advantage of someone else's loot by winning a battle. But a team who is looking good for loot, which is the complete opposite end of the spectrum, is SJP2. A gold and 2 purples to work with already. They're feeling very comfortable at the moment.
Finished 12th in the lobby last game. They were able to pick up at least 2 kills, but maybe not as much as they would expect, considering the position they did find themselves in. But certainly in a very dominant place right now. And as you say, I mean, the 2 purple armors and a gold armor, as long as they can get into a decent position within this circle, they should be able to pick up a decent amount of kills. They can afford to be aggressive as well. When you've got armor like this, you can get aggressive, you can push teams, but it's whether they're confident. After a game where they were only able to pick up 2 kills, you never really know, is your shot on? How much have you warmed up coming into these games? I imagine a lot of the teams would have warmed up very successfully. You never know with people's routines and what they have to do through each day. But it's BDS who are currently under fire with some decent shots with the auto shotgun. Nursey will take down Balon. That's going to be one member of Third Impact falling to the floor.
Oh, and the frag grenade absolutely launches Kramer here from BDS. He's going to have to try and stay alive. And of course, the team who were set up in this building was SJP2. But the difficulty for Third Impact is the fact that SJP2 are holding this down very, very nicely. You can see Ballon G going to be taken down as well as Jazz. So 2 players falling. Unfortunately, there's 1 more left. Big shot onto the Pathfinder as well. And SJP2 at the moment, we talked about how they look good armor-wise. Well, KP-wise as well. They're looking pretty healthy at the moment.
Yeah, I think as soon as they smelt any sort of fight that was nearby, they were diving on it straight away, and quite rightly too. They were able to find some very weak members of BDS. BDS now eliminated as well, just down to 17 squads, so not good. Again, BDS, one of those teams who were just on the cusp of being relegated last week, but they were able to survive. A team that we have to be keeping an eye on as potential relegatees, should I say, going into the Bravo division. Pepega Gibbo, a team that should not be relegated though, and I expect them to be in the Alpha division through the entirety of this competition, have found themselves with a decent amount of high ground up here on bridge. They are getting shot by several different angles, but it's from a distance where they can feel somewhat comfortable here.
And they love to play the edge of zone as well. You won't see this team rotating early and trying to take down a spot. They play for edge of circle, they play for those fights, and they play for those KP on the edge as they move in. A little bit of a different play style to what we should call the more traditional play style in competitive Apex Legends, where you are posturing for that position early. But one thing that's interesting for me, just looking at this map overhead and some of those potential end game finishes, no one really not sure if there's a team on the Snake, which is just to the west of Harvester. Pretty strong position to be held up in, should we see that circle pull back that way, which we do sometimes. But for Third Impact, we saw them in that fight. It didn't go their way. And now for Ziki, he's going to be having to play for those placement points as he runs through the meadows, a little bit like Theresa May claimed she did once.
That is a very interesting analogy you've gone for there, and you completely caught me off guard, but I love it. But yeah, you're completely right. You're going to have a lot of difficulty ratting from this point. We have seen teams do it, and you can be successful, but you're not really going to be picking up kill points. You just have to imagine you're just trying to salvage some amount of placement points at this point and hope that you don't get caught out. And as always, we get the beautiful third-person cameras as anyone is left as a rat. I mean, do you remember week 1 when we just had rat cam? Rat cam is a thing now here in GLL.
Long live rat cam as well. It's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. It obviously gives the information we need as well, and it transfers the information to everybody watching at home in the best possible way as well. But Team Elitist now up on the tracks and looking to make their rotation in a little bit late as well. And Strafey, we talked about him last week, and the train hasn't been looted. And for Ziki here as a final player alive for the squad, he's going to try and throw this blue armor off as well. So he's got a couple of armor swaps to potentially work with here and take his time. But beautiful stuff there to be the last player alive, jump on that train and find a little extra armor to help you scrape some placement points together. Good news for him.
Good news for him indeed, and maybe bad news for the team that Outsiders have been able to catch in their vision though. But I say bad news, it's Alliance, and they actually are far better equipped for this fight, and they do have the caustic available, so I'm sure they're just going to hunker down here and try and bait a little bit of a push. Maybe see if they can offer one of the players up and say, hey look, I'm vulnerable, chase me, and then they'll walk into all these caustic traps. But they have been tagged quite a lot here, but they are able to get inside, they are able to armor up, so they don't need to worry too much. But it's just me a question of whether this team does actually push them. Are Outsiders going to take this fight, or are they going to just wait and sit back?
Both these teams will have to rotate as well, so it's going to be a case of who shows their cards first here and who wants to try and make that rotation first. You can see that Outsiders are the team who have a better position as far as where that next circle is going to be moving. It looks like they're going to give up on that potential battle as well with Alliance and decide to rotate into the tunnel here to try and force their way around a wide rotation towards that next zone. You can see a few goodbye shots, we'll call them, coming in from Alliance as well as they make their way through. And now Hakis and the boys are going to have to make their rotation as well. And it'll be interesting to see if they take that wide rotation. Are they going to try and shadow the team that just moved through that tunnel, or are they going to move through the north side of the map? The only problem is it's such a tight choke to try and move through. It can be really, really tough to make it through there.
If they go now before the red comes in, they certainly have an easier path in, but it's still going to be somewhat difficult because there are teams that have vantage points and they will be able to kind of pop some shots off at them. If there's a scout from distance, then they may get tagged quite heavily, Alliance, and they do have two character models that are, of course, going to be easier to tag in Gibraltar and Caustic. It's not easy to traverse the map with those two big boys. Pepega Gibbo, they have the high ground here and they have spotted the rotation coming through. It's just a question of whether they dive on this. They have been able to put up a zip, so Alliance are probably going to be under fire here.
Yeah, Alliance are going to have to get some armor swaps off, and they're going to have to get them quickly. The one good thing for them is they do have that Caustic, as we see the bombardment coming in from Gibraltar here, and that's going to be Zipper's hands who are putting that one to use. Now we're going to see the aggressive portal as well, and for the people trying to push here on Pepega Gibbo. It looks like they're going to have to play this one a little bit more carefully than they would have wanted to, because Alliance have managed to get back up to full health now. And if there's a team you don't really want to be taking in a straight 1v1, it is going to be Alliance.
Yeah, Matafe getting some decent shots there with the R99. Does have support from his team. Does have a wingman in his back pocket as well. Guy is going to have the height, is going to be able to do some real damage. Q is going to go down, so Xipeth has been able to at least find the first one onto Alliance here. Pepega Gibbo definitely have the advantage in this particular fight, but if it goes on for too long, they're going to be joined in probably third party, so they need to get this fight finished quickly.
Yeah, Ad Hoc Gaming, former Ad Hoc Gaming, I should say, actually playing under Pepega Gibbo. Are putting the pressure on here, and for Alliance, they really are struggling here, but they've managed to extend this fight for a little bit longer, and unfortunately here, Xipeth is going to be coming under fire, but he's going to do enough damage himself to take down Vates, and now this fight is going on for longer and longer, and they've got to keep an eye on that timing as well, as we are going to see the final player taken down here. So although that fight took a while, it is going to be Pepega Gibbo who take down Alliance, one of the strongest teams we have in our Alpha Division.
Yeah, that's going to be a real shame. Alliance are going to be out alongside finalized major pushes, BDS, Dead Inside, and Vibin that you can see on the team tracker on the right-hand side. And you can also see how many players are remaining with those little white dots as we're watching Figvam also eliminated. Down to just 13 squads. Flavor of the Month just have the 2 players, as well as Third Impact. So no single rats remaining now. Still full healthy squads around. But then, of course, we have a couple of teams who've just got a couple of stragglers.
Ultimate Accelerant.
But SJP2 still set up here, and we move over to Flavor of the Month, who have moved into the Snake here in Harvester. Have lost Noth, unfortunately, for them, which means that they're not going to have that Revenant to give them that opportunity to push onto some teams who are holding down some areas and get that essentially free damage off before being returned. So they're going to have to play edge of circle here, but the only difficulty for them is they don't have a Gibraltar, they don't have a Caustic to help them bunker up in any particular areas to work with. So they're going to have to try and find a little spot to work from, as Taylor is going to be the man who has to do that scouting mission.
Yeah, that scouting mission that is always a pretty scary one, but if you are going to be a Wraith, then you always have the possibility to get away, so you don't have to worry too much. He does spot one player, so he just does a full 180, turns on himself, and will instead look to try and rotate a different way in. His outsiders are just going to try and gatekeep this team that he's going to be moving in at the moment. Do have a decent amount of weaponry available. Those wingmans are going to do some real damage. R99 from Mistral as well does have a couple of grenades to work with, just to ensure that no one can push them from above. But they could end up being stuck in a pretty difficult situation if they're not careful here. They might have to choose as to whether they want to push that team or instead rotate inside, as bodyguards go down and the 13th team eliminated now, so just 12 squads left. The 8th team eliminated, excuse me.
Yeah, a much different circle to what we saw in that game number 1 as well. Not as much real estate to be held down like Fragment does offer. So these teams are having to move across open areas, having to be engaged in fights. And this is where that early rotation really does pay off for teams. Na'Vi now set up on the high ground, but you can see they're going to have to make a move as well. And Claus is going to be retreating to his teammate here, who does have the Kraber, so an opportunity to hit a shot. But unfortunately, the Na'Vi player can't quite land that one. That might have been the opportunity they needed to hit that shot and move up on this team.
Surprisingly, Na'Vi weren't able to win any of their games in the Bravo lobby, despite getting promoted, of course. They just weren't able to get that elusive champion victory. Instead, they were just able to succeed based off the amount of kills they were able to pick up, as well as a fairly consistent amount of games with their placement points. But North now are winners from match number 1, and another team that was promoted from Bravo are being a real nuisance to Flavor of the Month. Pierre goes down, and it's just going to be Taylor now. Now, we have seen Taylor very successful as a rat in previous games, but as a reminder, Flavor of the Month, they struggled in match number 1. They haven't been able to find too many kills in match number 2 here as well. So big responsibility on Taylor's shoulders to survive and pick up some very important placement points.
12 squads remaining for him to have to navigate his way round as well. Nasky, Strafe, and Dell, no surprise to see them still involved as well. And you can see that Dell as well has a fully leveled Evo shield to be working with on the Wraith. And you can see the portal in front of them. They're just trying to land some shots on those teams who are going to be rotating through there. Frag grenades are going to go in, and big damage coming in from Nasky as well on the Watson. So although they don't get the downs they were looking for, they do manage to get one. As you can see in the kill feed here, Strafe is going to pick up the kill, or the down I should say, onto Hardeki. It was the finish, excuse me, and now we're going to see them have to take their time a little bit more, and they're set up center zone here as we can see the shift actually towards this Springs area of the map. So the teams who are set up a little bit area on that higher ground are going to have to navigate their way down into these buildings.
Nasky Strafendale basically set up the crystal maze inside this building at this point, so if anyone wants to push them, they'll have to have some sort of assistance, maybe from a bold man. Not you, Mark, I meant the host of the crystal maze, don't worry too much. Na'Vi are going to be in a position where at least they're in the circle. They can gatekeep a couple of teams that are going to be pushing in, make sure they take down that Watson ult to ensure that no one's healing up for free. Another squad gets eliminated. I think that might have been LG actually taken out of the game. We'll see in a minute in the team tracker. Yes, it is. Luminosity out, and we're down to just 11 squads.
Papega Gibbo are one of those teams, and they're in a superb position here up on the high ground. You can see they are going to be inside that next circle as well. So ultimate height very much in the hands of Papega Gibbo, but for Nasky Strafendale, they're going to have to make their move as well. As you can see that pull there to the building, the dome building, straight in front of them. You can see it being pinged. You can see there are a few teams just trying to do what they can to survive in those rocky areas, but there's a fight here on the edge of the circle going down between Papega Gibbo and another team who are set up on the tracks.
Yeah, both do have the high ground, so at least they'll be able to shoot any teams that are going to be below them, but it's the fact they have to rotate so heavily into that dome building you were talking about, so they're going to probably have to take this fight before they even think about it, but it's who's going to have the cojones, who's going to say, we're going to push in, we're going to get aggressive. Outsiders are the kill leader at the moment. They've picked up a decent amount of kills and a decent amount of kill points as well that will be doubled in this lobby, but Papega Gibbo seem to be just being patient here. They have the easier drop into this next circle. They've got the rope just to the left of them, so they can descend into somewhat of a comfortable spot. So they don't have to be too aggressive. They can wait, and wait they will, and their patience will pay off. They're able to get some free shots here onto Outsiders, but Outsiders managed to get below the bridge, and somehow, in this tiny circle, we still have 11 squads, so I'm expecting to see a lot in the kill feed in the next couple of seconds.
The Outsiders, although they managed to get out of dodge away from Papega Gibbo, the damage that was done has just created kills for other teams. One of the Outsiders players was dropped in that engagement, so for Papega Gibbo here, they can play this track. They can be a little bit more patient than the other teams who are trying to stay alive in this lobby. One team who have managed to survive in this lobby and have done a superb job of it are North, the winners of our game number one, the team who were promoted in the final position as beautiful shots coming from Tashin there to back that player down in the building, and they're not happy with just those shots being landed. It looks like they want to relocate off of that push now that angle has been cut off.
4 squads went down in that little push with the circle that got ever so slightly smaller. Nasky Strafendale still find themselves in a really decent position to work with. Papega Gibbo have been able to claw onto the edge of the circle, right on the edge of the bridge, like you said, Mark, so they didn't even have to descend. This is such an amazing position for them because they're in the next circle as well. You could argue in one of the most advantageous spots on the map right now, and doing some real damage, just being a real nuisance to this team that's down in Dome. The other team that you could say has the other most advantageous points. So these are the two teams we have to look at, Papega Gibbo and that team that is in Dome. So once we get an indication of who that is, I can kind of get a better insight as to who the other team that might be contesting them. But Na'Vi, again, a Kraber to work with, and Imps is doing some damage, just has to be careful from these teams up above.
Just to do so, and I wanted to give some credit there to Kuya up on the top of those tracks, hitting those wingman shots with that 2-time HCOG. Not something that you see a lot of players opting to use. Usually the 1-times that will be on that, or the iron sights if you're strange, like the man Matafe, who loves to have the iron sights on that wingman. I can't hit those shots myself, but Kuya here making the 2-times work, and you can see again just a double body shot there onto the player down the bottom, backing them down as we're down to our last 7 teams here. Nasky Strafendale, Na'Vi, North, Papega Gibbo, SJP2, Team Elitist, and Triumph Gaming with that solo player alive.
Yeah, really good performance from Elitist, but Nasky Strafendale, they're in a really decent spot in this building, but there is a team below them. I think that's why they are being hesitant. That's why they don't want to push down just into another team's weaponry. Instead, they can just hold here as the circle has moved in ever so slightly. Still 7 squads. Everyone's been able to move in. Everyone's been able to find a little bit of a real estate, but not much to work with now at this point. You just need to have a healthy squad, and to be honest, everyone does except Triumph. There's only 1 rat left in these 7 squads.
Well, RPR has the Devo in hand, and it's going to help him get some kill points on the board as well. The defensive bombardment's going to come in from a Gibraltar, so they're going to have to take their time and not peek And make sure they can get those heals off. Going to be helped and assisted by that gold armor, of course. And now Denze, last player alive here for SJP2, manages to get the down, and he also managed to sneak in and get a revive as well. So if he can get one player back in the action here, they might have a chance of sneaking up some placement points.
Yeah, he's just hoping that there was enough distraction on the map, and it looks like he has been able to get that revive up. Pepega Gibbo still have the high ground to work with here, and they're just kind of scouting across the rest of the map to see if there's any bullets flying where they can get some information and do some damage from up here. A fully charged Evo shield will be spotted across the map, but all the other teams, Mark, they're all right next to each other, whether they're above, below, or to the side. They're all pretty much in touching distance at this point. It's all going to come down to these next 45 seconds. Who is going to be able to successfully move into this end circle, and who's going to be able to catch any of the movers at the same time?
And I kind of want to watch Pepega Gibbo at the moment because they're up on that high ground. Teams are going to have to rotate, and the fact that they've got that Pathfinder as well, they might be able to zip in late here as SJP2 have not only managed to get one revive, they managed to get their full complement of players back into this game. So SJP2, from a position that looked a little bit perilous at one point towards this endgame, are now going to be a big part of the action.
Well, North are going to be the first team to kind of make their way towards that circle, but 3 Wraith portals are there. This is going to be absolute carnage, and Pepega Gibbo are going to be above it all, like angels in the sky, but they are not going to be helpful angels whatsoever. They're going to make this hell for everyone pushing in.
So a moment of quiet here just as we see that circle about to close. The dome's going to go down. You can see the zip line being set up, and they're going to take this as late as possible. Tashin for North is going to be inside this circle as well, with the shotgun shots going in and running out, and RPR now is one of those players who is still involved in this battle. The Devo's going to be shot. It's just Wraith portaling at the moment. Who is going to be the team who can survive this all out? It looks like North might be that team who can get things done. The Devo is going to do the final damage. North will win back-to-back games here. They played the portal absolutely perfectly, and the Devo is so devastating when it comes down to those 1v1s right at the end.
Yeah, North were just in such a good position where they were the closest team, even though they portaled, they were closest to that next circle, so they were able to wait a little bit longer before they went through the portals, do at least a little bit of damage, go back through the portal, and then be the last surviving team out of the pure carnage that went through, because they hadn't been ticked down as much because they were a little bit closer. We didn't get to see things from Pepega Gibbo's point of view, but they tried to zip, they probably tried to stay alive, but then as they dropped, I think they just dropped into a sheer amount of gunshots. And unfortunately, they weren't able to pick up the victory after having such an advantageous position with the high ground, but you could argue North's positioning was better when it came to that final circle.
Yeah, certainly had the least distance to travel. Knew the team were going to have to move above them as well. As we check out some of the highlights here from game number 2. A little bit more frantic action on the rotations than we saw from game number 1, but no surprise to see that with where that circle was going to be located. But impressive stuff here from North. As I say, they were the team who just managed to scrape qualification into the Alpha Division here by 3 points as I look across at my other screen. And by doing that and then coming in and winning back-to-back games in the Alpha Division, we talked about how you have to make up points, right? Well, this is the perfect way to start.
Yeah, they've guaranteed themselves into Alpha next week as well with 2 victories. There's no way they're going to be relegated at this point, so now they can play with a little bit more confidence that they are going to be in this lobby next week, and who knows, maybe they can pick up a 3rd, maybe a 4th. It would be a sight to behold if we can see consistency. That's one of the most impressive things for me throughout Apex's history, is teams that can be consistent. When we look at TSM and how they dominated the scene for so long and how they won those back-to-back tournaments, it's so difficult to find consistency in a battle royale, especially one like Apex Legends. So the fact that teams are doing so just really is a testament to how well they're performing and how good they are at the game. As we look at the final highlights once again from all that action unfolding in the final circle, but it all comes down to North just being closest to that circle, and they didn't get ticked as much by the damage from the ring coming in.
Always useful to have a devotion in the back pocket as well when it comes down to those very, very final moments. But well played by North again, as you say. There was they were in a position when we thought that circle might be pulling a little bit towards that respawn beacon building, where, you know, they were in a great position there, but they actually managed to rotate essentially across the entirety of those teams who were set up in those buildings, managed to sneak their way through. So I'd love to go back and watch that rotation and see how they made their way through, because that was pretty much the play that won them that game, being able to avoid the damage from those teams, keep a full complement of players alive, and get into that position to move into that circle. But I'm looking across some of the teams who fell early there as well. And Alliance were one of those teams who fell early. They fell within that top 15 to top 10 teams, I want to say. The first 10 teams to go. Apologies, my brain just stopped working. But it's always a surprise when you see one of those big squads going down early. And you have to say, maybe it wasn't so much of a surprise that the team that took them down made their way into that top 5.
Yes, we are seeing teams that have been more successful with their rotations, a little bit smarter with the rotations, succeeding in the first 2 games. Those that have been opting for more of an aggressive play style and kind of pushing and hoping to catch people off guard hasn't worked out as much in this week's games because the games haven't been as open. They've been a lot more kind of secluded. There's been a lot more buildings to hide in, and if you go for a push, you've been pushing into basically just a hell of a lot of Watson fences, and it hasn't been a fun decision to make. So that's why we haven't seen those teams with the Revenant as successful. Flavor of the month, they weren't able to achieve as much as we've seen from them in the previous week, but still 4 games to work with. 1 left on World's Edge, where I think we're going to see a little bit more of this normality, but then we move into Kings Canyon later, and I can't wait for that.
Well, before we get into our final game on World's Edge, we're going to go for another break to set everything up. Don't go anywhere, though. We'll be back in just a few moments. Welcome back to the GLL Masters Summer, and game number 3 is ahead of us, but North have been what we should be talking about because games 1 and 2 have fallen into their hands, Dan. It's been domination from the team who have been promoted into the Alpha Division from the Bravo.
Not only winning games, but also getting a decent amount of kill points on the way to that victory as well. The first one, I would say that they were in the right place at the right time, but certainly the second match, they found their way into the perfect position, a brilliant rotation, being able to figure their way out and get close to that final circle so that they could be the last team to portal in, and then they had the devotion to work with as well. But North looked like a real team to be reckoned with here, and they have certainly left their implant footprint, one of the two, on this lobby, and you can see that they are top of the leaderboard, just ahead of Pepega Gibbo, who just have a sheer amount of kills. 9 kills so far for them. The placement points aren't quite as good as North, but they've certainly done a real good job here as well.
Of course, this is only the match that we just saw, so this is after match number 8 of our week number 2. So this is going to be the total standings now, so you can get an idea of how things are looking. And North starting to establish a little bit of a lead here now at the top. Big placement points. No surprise to see that. 15 kills to go alongside it as well, which with those placement points getting in towards those later games is no surprise as well. But Pepega Gibbo are the closest team to them. 16 KP to their name, 54 points, and just in behind them, Triumph Gaming sat on 52.
And as always, I have to be the Danny Downer and start to focus on those teams that are in the relegation zone. There are still a lot of teams that are in contention for it, though. Those at the bottom don't have to worry too much because 15th place is still reachable. Third Impact right on the cusp, but then Flavor of the Month still down there in that bottom 5. They weren't able to pick up a decent amount of points in the previous game. Again, they lost a couple of members a little bit early, so they had to rely on Taylor to try and rat it out, and he just wasn't able to get far enough to take them out of that bottom 5. But I wasn't expecting to see Flavor of the Month down there, and to be completely honest. Third Impact had a good week 1 as well, so I'm expecting them to pick it up a little bit later. But there are some teams who are just better at Kings Canyon than World's Edge, so that's something we also have to take into account, Mark.
And we also have to take into account quite how tight the entire table is. Of course, again, we've only had 2 games to bring you so far today in week 2. But, I mean, major pushes down at the bottom. Yeah, they have 0 points on the board. But Third Impact, who are in 15th at the moment, only 8 points. And remember, this is double points in the Alpha Division as well. So that's just one half-decent game, and you can find yourself out of that relegation area. But enough talk about what's happened. Let's talk about what's going to happen, because we're into game number 3 already. Our final game here on World's Edge, Dan. And the team who have won our first 2 games are going to be looking for the trifecta here. It's going to be North, and no surprise to see them landing towards Overlook and the no-name just outside of Fragment.
That would be quite something if they were able to make it back to back to back here in the Alpha lobby, but certainly the first 2 games, their positioning has been so good that they've been able to get high ground above other teams, and that's allowed them to just rain down terror from above and pick up a decent amount of kill points, which of course are doubled in the Alpha lobbies. So if you can find yourself getting those placement points, but also picking up a huge amount of kill points, then you're going to put yourselves in a really good position to getting towards those finals after week 4. But honestly, I've been really impressed with North. We didn't really know what to expect after they came out of the Bravo lobby. Of course, we've seen them compete in other tournaments and we knew what they were capable of, but they have really just dominated these first 2 games. So I think they should be able to stay in the Alpha lobby for quite some time to come.
We are going to see another contestant going down here in the Geyser. And of course, it was Vibin who were on the receiving end of it last time. We see the silence going out from Joke as well, trying to see if he can find anyone. But it looks like at the moment they're not able to locate any of these players. And it's actually going to be FigFam, who did win the battle last time, have lost 1 player. So excuse me when I say that they managed to get out of dodge, because FigFam at the moment and Carry Rubik are going to have to maybe think about rotating back for that banner. But another team who are coming under fire here is Na'Vi, and Ninemps at the moment is desperately just trying to do what he can to stay alive as the Gibraltar has been dropped. As Faizu now skips left, skips right, manages to get a battery for his troubles while he's coming under fire. But that team, of course, is going to be Nasky, Strafe, and Dell, who are set up in the east side of Fragment. So difficult situation for them to find themselves in.
A little bit of a hopscotch being played there, but at least he's able to survive and get away. Finalized aren't going to chase this one. I think they'll be more than happy just to make sure that they were able to loot up, and they can probably rotate across and pick up potentially some free loot from the other way. But Nasky, Strafe, and Dell might have had a sniff of another team over on this side, so they are going to be pushing their way just around the left side of this building. But it is going to be Na'Vi on the center of it at the moment. Can they recover the banner is going to be the real question. They are going for it, but it's whether they are going to be contested. It is going to look like Claus is just going to help Faizu here push across. He's just going to lay down some covering fire, but he does need to indicate to his teammate that there is the potential they could get flanked from the other side.
Yeah, the difficulty here with these battles going on for all of these teams inside Fragment, and for Nasky, Strafe, and Dell as well, that few seconds that they've had to take to rotate, to heal, to wait for those fights to calm down means they're going to be slower on their rotation. For a team that loves to rotate early, that could be the difference between a prime spot inside that next zone or a secondary spot, which they're going to have to do some heavy work with. Speaking of that zone as well, you can see a hard pull over to the west side of the map. You see drill sites still involved, train yard, Mirage Voyage, and we did see one of those end circles, which Alliance won, of course, just down the bottom on that compound, just to the north of Mirage Voyage, being a potential end circle here for those Pathfinder teams to try and find their way towards.
Yeah, you can see all the pings on the map where players are trying to predict as to where that circle is going to be finishing. Is some nice shots coming out from Nasky with the R99 here. He's going to tag up one of those players that he's going up against, and it's whether they do get aggressive and it's whether they push here. They do have the train to work with as a little bit of cover. Picks up a blue shield for a little bit of an extra treat, but it looks like the Wraith portal is there, so they may have escaped here. There is Ratcam. Well, and in effect here, just one player on his own up in the train. And it's one of the best places to be if you are going to be ratting. Not many people are going to be pushing into those train carriages just willy-nilly. Usually they will push up there if they want to get, well, an indication of someone already being there, or if they want to set up for something. But you'll see how he gets on later in this game.
Major pushes here. One of those teams who aren't having the greatest of starts here on week number 2 are going to have a much better performance, as we see them still being alive, as well as every single other team on the server. Of course, no teams are going to be falling, and it looks like every single team has managed to get their full complement of players back into the game as well. So 3 minutes still left on round number 1 to close. You can see here BDS Esports are going to be making their way towards the lava fissure area of the map, running their way past train on their rotation. So all teams still very much all intact, and all teams still looking for position on the map.
Yeah, they want to rotate in early, want to be able to set up, especially if you're running the composition, the more standard composition with the Watson.
Okay,
I wonder how Flavor of the Month are getting on. This Alliance have been able to find their way into a decent position at Mirage Voyage. You were talking about how they won that game before around this kind of area, and I mean, I want to see this composition put into full effect, if I'm completely honest, Mark. I want to see them get that perfect circle where the caustic really can pay off. Because if you can get in the right place, you get the right circle, then it can be almost impossible for a team to push in and take you down. So we'll see what happens with Alliance, but Triumph have control of Mirage Voyage at the moment, and they were able to tag down Alliance ever so slightly below them.
Yeah, the difficulty for Alliance so far is I think they've lost IPN pretty much as the first player to go down on a few different occasions so far in this game, and their whole game plan is built around getting towards that end game, getting IPN into a position to put that caustic gas into effect, use that ultimate to really cause some problems. So they're maybe going to play this one a little bit slower. They got the Gibraltar on their hands as well if they want to just work their way into that end circle. But at the moment, they look like they're quite comfortable sitting up under Mirage Voyage here in this little half building, which is, of course, buried by that snow. But Nasky, Strafe, and Dell as well, they've gone really, really deep into this second circle here. You can see them right at the back side of it. So they're going to be playing for position when that circle does move. It looks like they might try and hit that beacon as well, which is just down to their left-hand side as we look here. But Na'Vi coming under a little bit of pressure as well. And Claws is going to be forced here to queue out of danger as they're making their way towards that choke. And they're still a little bit late on their rotation. No surprise to see as they, of course, had to get their teammates back into this game. But 20 squads still alive. No player's going to be really in too many problems at the moment. Only the one to be taken down, unfortunately, and that will be to the hands of Na'Vi. So 1 KP on the board for them. And FigVam here are going to be the team who are engaging in that battle with Na'Vi for this choke.
Yeah, it's just going to be third impact with the 2 players remaining. FigVam looks like they are wanting to escape this one here. Don't want to be taking that fight, and I think that's just the general consensus for the entire lobby at the moment. We don't want to take fights right now, because we know where the circle is, because we've been able to utilize Pathfinder's abilities to predict the next circle, we can move on as we are on board with third impact. That one team who lost a player, but they've been able to pick up the banner at the very least, so we might see this 59 go right back up to 60 yet again if they can respawn their final member. Team Elitist, another team that struggled last week, just were able to survive relegation in the Alpha lobby, but they had a big game too here in week 2, so they might have given themselves a little bit more confidence to work with.
Yeah, fully kitted Scout here as well. He's got the double tap on it, although it's not engaged at the moment. Gold barrel to work with as well, so he'll be able to line up some shots. The only thing he maybe is missing is a little bit of range. Unfortunately, just having that 1 times on it. Rat's still alive up here as well, just chilling. It's kind of like a new modern thing I've noticed. People love plants now, like indoor plants. It's kind of got that vibe, you know.
I recently moved, and I did have to purchase a couple of fake plants for the inside of my house. So I'm glad you brought it up. It made me feel special. But we say rat cam. I said rat cam, but actually it's not a rat. It's just a team that are just very much hiding and don't want anything to do with them. I think it's yep. The rat is not alone. Even though they're playing like rats, they are a group of rats at this point, and they are more than happy just to sit here in the carriages above train yard. Is going to be Rugby sat in the corner with his plants, Mark.
Looks like they may be trying to bait a team in here. As you can see, the Watson fence is not being engaged. They're taking their time, waiting for someone to go in, waiting for some prey before they decide to take them down. BDS Esports now still set up around this truck. So looks like they're kind of hedging their bets at the moment of where that is going to be moving potentially that next circle. They might not have the beacon information, even though they are running that Pathfinder. So they're going to be playing a little bit of a slower game here. And for a team who isn't running Gibraltar, like we've mentioned, important for them to try and maybe work their way towards that next circle a bit. Or maybe they're looking to hold down here in the fact that they might think it's ending around where that previous ending that we saw was. We now see that next circle popping up. And it is going to be very similar to what we saw. Some of Lava Fissure still involved. Some of Drill Site still involved as well. The truck where BDS are set up is still involved in this next circle as well. So a little bit of an awkward one here for teams to try and work out where they want to hold down. That choke might be a pretty good point to try and hold down for some teams.
Na'Vi, the first squad to be eliminated from match number 3, our final match on World's Edge before we transition to Kings Canyon. But I think you hit the nail on the head there, Mark. Like, this is going to be a tricky circle to maneuver, but that's part of the fun, right? Like, that is what Apex Legends at the highest competitive level is all about. It's about maneuvering your way around the map, rotating accordingly, trying to find your way through certain nooks and crannies, ensuring that you avoid other teams or pushing teams at the right time. And I think teams like this that we're seeing, like everyone in this lobby, they thrive in these environments because they know how to react quickly. They know when they need to change their direction or shift momentum in a different way, depending on whether they're being aggressive or defensive or just trying to play slow, play fast. And that's part of the fun of both playing and watching Apex Legends for me, as things get a little bit more fast-paced, and it's Flavor of the Month who are going to be initiating this one with the totem from the Revenant. But it looks like Outsiders do not want any of it, and quite rightly will retreat.
Yeah, they managed to send them all back as well, so the totem not being effective here again for Flavor of the Month. The Revenant not having the impact maybe that they were hoping it would have, a similar one to what it had on week number 1. But now we're going to see OS just taking their time to set up here. They've got the Scout locked onto Flavor of the Month as well, and Noth's got that charge rifle in his hands as well. Pretty decent armor. Well, very, very decent armor, I should say. Underselling that ever so slightly with 2 purples and a gold on Flavor of the Month here. So they're going to be in a position where they can potentially think about formulating a push with 19 squads still remaining. And here we can see Pierre just having to watch his back here, make sure no teams are going to be rotating in late. And if they do manage to catch one of those teams off guard, it does make that late rotation. It should be fairly comfortable for them to try and clean up.
Circle moves just ever so slightly northwest is where it's dragging. Very much over Lava Fissure at the moment, but there were a couple of pings pretty much dead center to where the circle is now that people were looking at, just southern of the rocks where a lot of the teams are currently residing. But those teams who are at the southeast of the map are going to have the most difficult rotation because they're going to have to go past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams around Mirage Voyage at the moment. Nasky Strafe and Del, though, in what I would say is one of the prime positions to be in. When we looked at where people were pinging and the finishes that we've seen previously in Apex matches, they certainly could be onto something here. And they have the zip available. They can rotate up onto the bridge if needs be. Third Impact have been able to resurrect their third member, so they are in a position where they can have a full and healthy squad again as they just kind of shoulder peek at the moment, see if they can see anything in Train Yard. I wonder if that team is still up there being a nuisance in the top above Train Yard of the carriages or not. But Dead Inside are going to have to take this portal back. They are under a little bit of a fire under here at Mirage's Voyage. And remember, there is a team waiting under Mirage Voyage at the moment with all those caustic traps as well. That's where Alliance were residing, but maybe they've moved now with the circle shifting just northwest.
Yep, 52 seconds left on this circle, and it is Alliance still set up in this building. The difficulty for them is where is their next rotation and where are they going to try and play from? So Alliance with some decisions to make, and all the teams who are also on the opposite end of this circle around Drill Site have got some decisions to make. And speaking of Drill Site, here we are jumping straight into the action. There were 3 teams set up around Drill Site. There was another team in the choke, which they're going to have to move through towards that circle. So the difficulty here for teams like Finalize, although they have managed to win that battle, is that they are going to have to fight again. But KP on the board nonetheless here for Finalize. That's going to be good news for them.
Team Elitist eliminated. Outsiders have a team below them as well. They are able to do some real tick damage here. Fire just going out and seeing if they can find anyone below them with the Incendiary, but nothing quite so far. But they're getting aggressive. They want to get this kill, and they're able to pick up the first one. Mistral is able to find that. Can they get a second? Well, they're able to get the complete wipe, and it's going to be Flavor of the Month falling again in 17th. I mean, this is not what we expected from them, but we have to see them shake things up and change things up in Kings Canyon, as Third Impact now are going to be under a little bit of pressure from behind. But G has been able to survive thus far and will be able to grapple away with Pathfinder and should be able to pop off this bat, and he should be comfortable and safe.
Yes, beautiful wingman shots initially there. Just couldn't hit that last one to get the finish on the player who was moving up the hill towards Train Yards. And now Outsiders, they have had a player knocked, but they are going to be able to retreat into the circle and should have a fairly comfortable revive on their hands here to get that player back into the game. Kaden now is going to be pushing up just to make sure that no pressure is going to be coming in from a third party. But looking at Third Impact, things were looking okay for them. But the only problem is one player has dropped, 2 players has dropped, and now Ballon G is going to have to deal with Outsiders pushing behind him as well, because he might be the next player to drop, and that would be them eliminated.
Well, here comes Alliance then. They've been able to shift so far across this map to pick up some kills, and they're able to find 1, maybe even 2. This could even be a third. Faves is going to have to just back off here. It does throw down the bubble just for a little bit of protection, but that allows the rest of the team to push in. Figvam, Outsiders, and Third Impact all eliminated during this battle of play.
So Alliance have made their way into a position at least to potentially think about getting involved in that end game. 14 squads remaining, but the only problem is there's a team swooping down from them from above, and that is bad news for Alliance here. But Vaves has managed to get rid of one, and I think they are going to survive here. But the pressure that came in really did come out of nowhere. And look at Luminosity Gaming now with that scout in hand, trying to finish off those Alliance players, trying to get aggressive and get those KP on the board. But Alliance had to be perfect in that battle, and I think they managed to survive here. Alliance have done fantastically well to hold off that pressure.
A couple of members of North have fallen, as well as LG at the same time. Maybe we're not going to see the back-to-back-to-back from North. Sanya is the only remaining player on Luminosity, has to portal back, has to just try and survive. Is he going to be able to even get away to get a bat off? Is going to go from the medkit first. So many players were just eliminated, now down to just 13 squads. Mandy is the only remaining player from North, so I doubt this is going to be a situation where they're able to win this game, but this is where we need to start seeing how they can perform in a different situation. Now their backs are against the wall and only have the one player remaining.
Alliance now creeping their way up as well. 18 seconds left on this ring, so they're going to have to make their way pretty quickly as well. The flatline shots will take out the interception pylon from the Wattson, so they will now be vulnerable to grenades inside that truck. You can see the Gibraltar ult being used as well, and Alliance really are throwing everything at that battle to slow things down. You can also see the Caustic ult being used as well, and that might just be a factor they don't really want to get these kills on the board. It's more about getting ahead of that team, trying to slow them down on their rotation, as IPN now is coming under fire from the team above them, and that team is SJP2.
And the Caustic ult almost just uses a smoke grenade really to get past and get away and hope they weren't going to be spotted and get out of vision of the team. But SJP2 now are going to be the nuisance team with a little bit of high ground, and they are going to portal back safely into Lava Fissure. So they had a little sniff, they had a little bit of a gunfight, but ultimately they just wanted to survive, and survive they have done so now. They are in a really, really good spot, and Alliance still doing damage, still picking up kills. That's a third for IPN, and they found themselves into the top 8 now. This is the Alliance we're used to seeing. This is the Alliance that can do some real damage if they can get to late game.
And Alliance just seem to have been under pressure for the last minute and a half of this lobby. However, they have somehow managed to come out on top of every single fight that they've been involved with. And, well, surprise, surprise, they're going to come in with another fight on their hands they're going to have to deal with. IPN's going to be pushing through the caustic gas as well and landing some nice shots to back that team off. And with a minute or so left on this circle, Alliance again are going to be forced to take one of these fights, but they're going to be feeling confident with anyone they go up against now.
Well, one team that's still surviving is Vibin. After a dreadful first 2 games and an early contention for them, they found themselves into the top 7 now as North, our back-to-back winners, have been eliminated in 8th place. So it's SJP2 with a little bit of high ground, and they are going to be able to finish this one off, but they get shot from the back as well. It's going to be Pepega Gibbo who are going to be a nuisance in their backside. So we are going to see Matafe doing a little bit of damage, but just rotating off and popping the Phoenix kit now, because they have pretty much got this next circle here, Mark.
Yeah, they've been in a fantastic position once again here, Pepega Gibbo, for this end game. And just looking across everything, purple shields to work with. Kuya's going to be working towards that full Evo as well, currently leveled onto purple. SJP2, who have had a pretty comfy game so far as well in this building, are now going to be shooting fish in a barrel, as these last teams are going to be rotating from the east of the map. And excuse me, KP for them is going to be the name of the game as they try and locate some of these players, but they're going to be inside that next circle as well. But Vibin, who you were talking about just a moment ago, have managed to survive. Well, Joke is going to be taken down, and that will be the end of their game, but important points for them at the opposite end of the table.
Yeah, potentially saving themselves from that bottom 5 for now, but they need more games like this if they are going to stay in this lobby. Nasky, Strafe, and Dell are stuck down low, but they're able to do some real damage at the moment. SJP2 are in prime position to win this game, and they have the bubble to work with as well, Mark.
And now we're going to see round 5 close, and we're going to see where these teams are going to have to move. And for SJP2, they're in a great spot. It's going to end up on those train tracks just to their left, maybe even just a little bit below that. But the only problem for them is the armor issue might become a problem, as they are actually going to get aggressively pushed here. I think teams realize that this is the gut spot to try and hold down, and if you can win this fight, you are going to be in a great position. And that team is Pepega Gibbo. Denze, last player alive here, trying to desperately rat out, has the Peacekeeper, but Matafe has got an R99 as well, and here comes the cavalry to clean out SJP2. Big push coming in from Pepega Gibbo to take a commanding position on the map.
actually, a member of SJP2 was able to survive. It was finally as they got eliminated. Natsuki, Strafe, and Dell are still alive. SJP2 still have that one rat, but now they've been eliminated. Now it's down to just 3. Gambit, Natsuki, Strafe, and Dell, and Pepega Gibbo. Pepega Gibbo have the high ground. They have the advantage, and surely it's just a rat on the other side. Kuya is going to get so much damage done here. They're going to get the cracks. They're going to do the damage. But where is this final member on the third team? Because that is going to be the spanner in the works here.
Surely this is
it's 3 men.
Game for Pepega Gibbo to take. The only issue for the team down the bottom, as you say, Natsuki's going to be taken down as well. Beautiful shots again with that 2-times wingman on the Pathfinder of Kuya. He's making that one work and has to retreat nice and quickly as he gets lasered as he tries to peek over that balcony to get some shots down. But they're in prime position to finish this game. 2 teams are below him. But they just got to be careful and wait for those engagements to go down before they finish them off.
Yeah, well, Gambit have been able to stay healthy here with all 3 members. I thought it must have been just a rat with how quiet they had been, but they had been biding their time down below. But now the team of Natsuki, Strafe, and Dell will fall. And Pepega Gibbo, well, they have the high ground here, Mark. Surely they should be able to close this one out.
Anakin said it best. And it didn't work out very well for him. Kuya going to be dropping down now, decides to get aggressive, manages to hit some beautiful Mastiff shots as well. They're going to come in, they're going to finish the job that they started, and they will take home game number 3, the final game that we have here on World's Edge. Pepega Gibbo, perfect play from them in that end game, especially that push onto SJP2 to take that position from them.
Yeah, I think they just recognized where like the power play position was on the map, where they needed to get if they were going to win that game. They were thinking for the win there. They weren't thinking about kills. They weren't thinking about placement. They were just saying, look, this game is winnable if we can achieve that position, because we know there's 2 teams that are down low, and as soon as we've got that high ground, it is going to be comfortable for them. And Pepega Gibbo, well, we knew they had that in them. Like from week 1, they were getting an insane amount of kills, but they weren't necessarily getting the placements. But as soon as they get that right game, well, they show what they were made of.
I love the fact that they took that decision towards the end as well, as we jump into the highlights here from game number 3 to be aggressive on that position. A lot of teams wouldn't have made that decision to put all their eggs in one basket and decide that we are going to push this, having got the damage, and take this god spot from the team who are holding it down. So shout out to them for making that decision and making that aggressive play. But Alliance, they fought their way through so many teams to be involved towards that end game. Unfortunately, it just got to the point for them where it was 1 team too many.
Yeah, and they actually used Caustic a little bit differently, but I suppose it is one of the ways you can use him, is using his ultimate is almost like a smoking ability, just to try and survive and try and push past teams, because they were constantly running, they were constantly moving, but they did pretty well considering they had to rotate so often. But it all came down to Pepega Gibbo having the high ground over the 2 remaining teams. Gambit did really well to survive into 2nd place, but unfortunately, like you said it happened with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and the high ground was greater in the end. Pepega Gibbo, after having so many kills and being 2nd in the leaderboard overall previous to that 3rd game, they're going to put themselves up with the chance of going number 1, because North were eliminated fairly early in that 3rd match.
Yeah, they went down a little bit earlier than they would have liked. However, they still did get those points on the board from the first 2 games. So Pepega Gibbo, that's a big win for them as well, because they were one of those teams in the top 3, I believe, on the overall standing. So a lot for them to still work with. And now that's the end of World's Edge. We move over to Kings Canyon, and that poses its own problems, Dan, for these teams.
It does. Now everything gets a little bit different. You got comfortable on World's Edge and you were kicking your feet up, putting your feet on the coffee table with a cup of tea. But now Kings Canyon has had all these changes with the patch. And are you going to play the same way? Are you going to stick with the same composition, or are we going to see changes? I guess we'll find out.
We're going to have to wait and find out indeed. And how do you think these teams are going to adapt to Kings Canyon? Because we did see a lot more of an aggressive play style last week from teams. Do you think we're going to see it slow down a little bit like we did on World's Edge here?
I mean, I hope not. I know that sounds bad, but some of the games that we had in Kings Canyon last week were just insane. We had a match where we lost like 10 squads within the first 2 rings, which is just unheard of when it comes to Apex Legends. But we did see a couple of teams last week shift their composition from World's Edge to Kings Canyon. Some people that said, okay, well, now we're going to start to play a little bit of Revenant because we feel like the lobby is going to be a bit more open. There's not going to be as many people just playing for real estate and playing for late game. As we look back at some of the highlights from Game 1 today, It doesn't feel like that long ago. These matches have been flying by thanks to all the phenomenal action from the teams competing, but it was a game that went to North in the end. They had the cliff edge, they had the circle, they just had to watch two teams unfold. They were a nuisance throwing grenades and doing some damage, but it was a big victory for them after they got promoted from the Bravo division last week, and they really just they put their mark on this lobby. I think the rest of the lobby would respect them for how they played in that first game.
And that confidence, of course, continued into game number 2 as well. As I say, it was a fantastic performance from them in game number 1, especially with some of the teams that were still involved in that end circle, some of the powerhouse teams from the EMEA region. But this is game number 2, and as I say, the confidence did ride over because, again, it was North who managed to get that back-to-back.
Yeah, North just showed a little bit something different in this second game, because the first game they had the cliff edge, they had the circle kind of fell on top of them, but they had to work for it so much in this second game as the circle got smaller and smaller around this kind of area. But they were able to predict it accordingly. They were able to position themselves closest to that final circle, and then they had a devotion to work with as well, which just meant they were able to win the final battles. But again, Pepega Gibbo did some real damage in match number 2, picking up some huge frags, picking up some decent amount of kill points, which are doubled. I can't stress that enough. Kill points doubled in the alpha lobbies, which just means that if you are able to out-frag the rest of the teams in the lobby, you're going to find yourselves in prime position in the leaderboards.
And then this is the end game, of course, and it was the rotation that came in from North as well, managing to find themselves into a position below Pepega Gibbo, who we were watching here. And this is North, the position they managed to find deep into that circle behind that rock. And while all this carnage was going down, they were able to bide their time, pick off a few KP, and then when it came down to these final moments, as that ring closed, as I say, it was North who did manage to move in with a devotion, and there's lots of fences up as well, and it was pretty simple for them to just clean things up. But 2 back-to-back wins there for North set us up for our game number 3 on World's Edge, the final game of World's Edge, of course. And things didn't quite go the way of North this time.
No, it didn't. I mean, we wanted the back-to-back-to-back because you like seeing it. You like seeing consistency in a battle royale, but unfortunately for North, they weren't able to do so. They fell a little bit earlier in match number 3, but they already had got the job done really in match number 1 and 2 on World's Edge. But for Vibin, who we see right now, they picked up some early kills. They won their 50-50 drop. It was massive for them because they were then able to go on and get a top 10 placement, which is going to be really important for them in terms of trying to get out of those relegation spots going into the final 3 games. But Alliance were the team who were constantly just stuck between a rock and a hard place, having to transition across the map with a different composition to do so. No Pathfinder to zip them away. No Wraith Portal to get them away. Instead, only have the Pathfinder to work with. But it was Pepega Gibbo who were the team to dominate this lobby. They pushed just at the right time to get the high ground, and they showed why they're such an experienced squad and why they are a squad to be reckoned with in this lobby.
Yeah, and Kuya here at the end as well with some beautiful wingman shots. And then, as I say, unfortunately for Naski, Strafe and Dell and Gambit Esports, they found themselves in that ravine below them, in this crater, and that just meant that once the damage was done here by Pepega Gibbo, they could just drop down and finish off what was a simple end game for them and close out World's Edge action for us today. But I mean, it was the push before that we didn't quite see, the one that was SJP2 in that high ground that they did manage to win, to take them down at the precise moment of opportunity, essentially, to get them into that position to win. And this is what it means for the overalls at the moment. We have the scoreboards ready. We can show you how many points are going to be picked up by different teams. And at the moment, after match number 9, you can see this is the results from match 9. Pepega Gibbo, big game from them. A 50 bomb, 13 kills and 24 placement points. They're going to be more than happy with that.
That is marvellous if you are a Pepega Gibbo fan, which I know there are plenty of fans, especially of Matafe in his stream, but they have been really succeeding in these lobbies, and it's good that they're able to have a victory to show for it as well. Down at the bottom, flavor of the month, Zero Bois. They are struggling when it came to World's Edge today. FigFam and Elitist also weren't able to pick anything up as well. But let's have a look at the overall leaderboard and see how match number 9 affects the overall leaderboard here. So down in that relegation zone, Elitist, Bodyguards, Third Impact, Flavor of the Month, and Major Pushers. But you can still see how tight it is, Mark. for those teams that are down in the relegation zone, they are not out yet. 3 matches remaining on Kings Canyon. And you just need that one game to get out. Vibin have been able to put themselves, 8 points out of reach of the relegation zone just with that one good game. So you just need something just to give you that little bit of a momentum boost.
Yeah, just one good game, as you say, is the perfect thing for them. Papega Gibbo, though, after 3 games, you can see them hit 104 points on the board after that huge game that we just did see. This is how things are looking in the Bravo division, though. And Flex Gang, I know you're a big fan of their logo, and I don't understand why you wouldn't be, to be honest with you. 46 points on the board for them. Cooler Esports, Fenerbahce bouncing back after being relegated last week from the Alpha Division. Exorcism and Over the Top. Lazarus just outside with Lava City Boys chasing them down. But some, again, Cooler Esports, Fenerbahce, big names in contention for that Alpha Division spot.
Does surprise me. Weigers all the way down in 19th. They only missed out on promotion by 3 points last week. And they're certainly going to need a huge 3 games on Kings Canyon if they're going to be anywhere close to being promoted. Elite Gaming RSA, another team that got relegated from the Alpha Division last week, find themselves down in 14th spot alongside Execute, YDN, Lava City Boys also outside of those promotion spots. So only Fenerbahce, who got relegated last week, seem to be in a position to get re-promoted and back into the Alpha Division as it stands. But of course, with 3 games left, plenty of points available.
Yeah, plenty of points available for all of these teams still to fight for. And the Bravo division is going to be a difficult place to get out of. It's going to be like standing in glue for a lot of these teams. But if they can fight their way out, then they're going to have the rewards of the Alpha Division double point system to play for in week number 3. But you have to say that so far it has been North and Papega Gibbo who have been setting the pace down before we get into Kings Canyon, of course.
They have indeed. We've had some incredible matches, North winning 2 back-to-back, but Papega Gibbo showing what they're made of. We're done with World's Edge, though. Upcoming, we have Kings Canyon. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break, but when we're back, we will finish off this week's matches with 3 on Kings Canyon.
Welcome back, everybody, and it's time for Kings Canyon. We have 3 games to come on that beautiful little map, which is going to cause a lot of chaos. Dan, this is where we saw things change up a little bit last week in week number 1 of action. We saw teams getting aggressive. We saw some much faster paced games, especially towards that game 5 and 6, where those teams who were in those relegation spots really did go hell for leather to stay and try and stay involved in that Alpha Division.
Yeah, when people needed points and they knew they had to go for kind of kill points rather than just trying to wait it out and bank on those placement points, that's when we just saw like the burst of energy. Like so many teams were killing each other in the first 2 rings. We had like 10 teams eliminated in matches 5 and 6 in the first 2 rings. It was insane, honestly. Like the sheer pace of it is not something that I've seen in competitive Apex for a long time. I don't even think at the start, when people were still trying to figure it out, we saw a pace like that. So hopefully we see more of the same, because like I personally enjoy seeing such pace. But I think now that people have been able to ease their way into the patch and probably play a little bit more of the map with the changes, we'll probably see more of a slow-paced game, especially in map 4, but maybe match 5 and 6 it might pick up again.
The 2 teams who are kind of leading the way in the Alpha Division at the moment are, of course, North with those big wins in game 1 and 2, and Papega Gibbo, who, although they didn't win those first 2 games, did manage to take game number 3, and in game 1 and 2 picked up some big KP and decent placement points along the way. So they're going to be the teams to watch out for at the top of the leaderboard. Of course, coming into week 1, though, Nasky, Strafe, and Dell were the team who were top of the leaderboards after week 1, I should say, excuse me. They've been a little bit quieter than we maybe would expect them in comparison to last week, but still very much at the top of the leaderboards, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, they still find themselves in third. They've still been able to get to that late game. They just haven't had as much success as we saw in week number 1. But I think they'll be okay with that. The fact that they picked up so many points in week 1, they're still picking up points here in week 2, means that their overall points across both weeks are still going to be in a decent position. And they can probably even start to think about finals at this point, which sounds crazy. But if you can have 2 solid weeks, you're putting yourself in a really good position at being one of those top teams to get close to finals.
Yeah, completely agree with you. I think they're going to be very, very confident with how the first 2 weeks have gone. But for Flavor of the Month, the team who were very, very impressive in week number 1, World's Edge really didn't go their way. They're down in that relegation zone at the moment. And if things don't pick up for them here on Kings Canyon, they could be facing a week potentially in that Bravo division.
Yeah, they are very much struggling. Like, they picked up 0 points in that third match when I thought they would probably try and pick up the pace a little bit. But when you're playing an aggressive comp with Revenant and then you're already down in that relegation zone and you know you have to be more aggressive, you know you have to look for more kill points, that's going to be even more pressure on your shoulders, and every fight is suddenly going to be a worry. And after 3 unsuccessful games, I wonder whether they're going to start to lose a little bit of confidence here. They need to find that little bit of a spark going into Kings Canyon, because if they fall short again in match number 4, then confidence is really going to be low. And I would hate to see a team like Flavor of the Month relegated into Bravo, considering the week they had in week number 1.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, though, is the fact that we do have 3 more games to go here in week number 2. And, of course, we are playing on Kings Canyon, so they are going to maybe have a few more fights fall their way that they can use that Revenant ult and use that Revenant composition a little bit more effectively, with the fact that they don't have as much open ground to negate between teams and between teams rotating. So for Flavor of the Month, I feel like Game 4 here, which we're about to get into, is super important for them to get out to a good start here on Kings Canyon, just to not only get the points on the board they need, but just to restore the confidence that they showed in week number 1.
It's just all about momentum, really, isn't it? Like, as soon as they're winning fights, they're going to be saying, all right, well, we're not going to be scared to push this team. We want to take advantage of the team that we see out of position. And in week 1, they were able to do that a lot. There were teams that they were able to catch off guard, but I think you summed it up perfectly at the start of the broadcast when you said people are becoming wise to the Revenant push now. They know when there is 3 players charging at them with the totem available, and they just run away from them. If they don't give them the free push, then there is no push available for them. So it makes perfect sense to just get out of dodge when you do see the Revenant ult being used, and certainly they haven't been able to find as much success as they did in week 1. But we're diving into Kings Canyon then, and are we going to see a little bit more pace about these matches? Pepega Gibbo won match number 3 on World's Edge, and it will be Octane's Gauntlet as to where they'll be landing, and it doesn't look like there was anyone with them, so it should be free loot for them.
Yeah, we're going to have to see if there's any contestants, and there is going to be a contestant, actually. It was Stanny, I believe, who was in one of those fights, who got dropped pretty early, so we've already had 1 knock in the lobby so far. We've already had the Pathfinder beacon being hit as well by Third Impact, so you can see here that the market area is very much central to where this zone will be. Salvage also involved, but a few different end circles still. It could pull towards the west side of that second circle, as you can see here, towards that riverbed. So difficult one for teams to try and judge so far. It's probably about posturing up and trying to get into the best positions to rotate should one of those strange little pools come in, as we do see, and again, a contestant. This time, it's going to be around the slums area.
Yep, Dead Inside have 3 members alive, and they're going to be able to get the first down of the game, and it's going to be BDS on the receiving end of it. And Dead Inside are chasing these 2 remaining members down. They want to pick up these kill points. They've spotted out 1 big damage there coming out from his teammate, just a 17 though from his Mastiff, but it didn't matter when Stanley's been able to do the damage with his Scout and Hemlock. And now it's a question of whether they can find this 3rd and final member. They're closing in, they're going to pinch him down, and Sajama will fall, but it's not going to be enough, as Nerzi does go down now, and Dead Inside stay alive, and they get the first squad wipe. 3 kill points to them, doubled, so 6 for them. BDS eliminated first.
Another fight going to be going down here as well, and it's going to be North on winners of game 1 and 2, who are feeling pretty good, but unfortunately for Mandy, he can't get out of dodge with that grapple quite at the right time. I thought he may have been able to make the great escape, but Tashin coming in from behind here is going to get the knock. That will be North winning the battle here and managing to get those 3 KP on the board, and hopefully for them as well, asserting some dominance over their drop.
And just like that, there's another fight. This is Kings Canyon. There are far more early fights than World's Edge at the moment, but Third Impact They don't look like they want to get involved in it, but someone who does want to get involved in Nasky, Strafe, and Dell. Nasky is able to hit the final shot, almost fell, but instead that's North eliminated from the game. So our back-to-back winners from match number 1 and 2 will not be able to do anything on Kings Canyon just yet. And it's one of the bigger teams from today's lobby eliminated in very early stages.
Yeah, it's a surprise to see 3 different teams as well dropping in the same location. And I mean, it looks at the moment like Runoff was really the place to be for those 3 teams. They're going to have to think about changing things up going into our next game, because if the 3 different teams are landing on the same POI, it means that one of them at least is going to be falling. So Outsiders here, you can see them. They're pretty happy with how they're set up. Looks like they're maybe trying to bait some teams in as they're sat around the west side of the riverbed, just taking their time, just chilling out. But 3 teams already, as you say, Dan, disappearing out of the server as we still have 9 seconds left on ring number 1 closing.
I thought the game had frozen there, but nope, just staying still and just waiting for something to happen, which sometimes is the best idea. If there's no one around you, you can just wait and you can be patient. One team all the way up in Slum Lakes that we saw that early engagement happen, they are going to have to rotate quite a lot down to the southern side of the map, and they probably need to move soon with round 1 closing in. Outsiders still just being patient and still holding and maybe waiting to see if anyone will rotate to them, but I think they'll be alright for now as Gambit are getting into a little bit of a fight. A couple of wingman shots being spammed across the map to see if they can hit anything. And as you say, even with the iron sights on the wingman, these players are still connecting with shots, which still just blows my mind.
Let's move here.
You can see Gambit here looking like they've got their favourable rotation here. They do have the Pathfinder beacon as well to work with. You can see that on the top left-hand side of your screen, and they're going to be quite happy to hold down this building. They do have the Watson as well, so early rotation is going to be key for their success. So Gambit going to be pretty comfortable with things at the moment. They do manage to land a few shots there, and look like a little bit of a no-reg, unfortunately, for the wingman. And he's going to pick up a H-Cog to work with as well to make that wingman all the more accurate even. I can spell English, I can say English, I can do English, I promise you. But Triumph here, set up as well, looking pretty comfortable. You can see from the outlines on the observer mode as well, there is a team in front of them, and unfortunately, Graceful's only got that alternator to work with, so the Pea-Shooter's not really going to get too much work done from that distance.
Yeah, just a couple of shots, I guess, just to let them know that they're there, perhaps. Maybe just try to tag them and try and warn them away, scare them away, because it's maybe like they're trying to just play a little bit of mind games here. They don't have the weapons, they don't have the armor, but if they fire a couple of shots and a couple of warning signs, the other team might think, well, if they're confident enough to shoot at us, maybe they have a decent amount of armor to work with. Maybe we shouldn't be pushing this. It's a weird one as we move over, and there's a fight. Zippeth takes down Nasky, and that's going to be Nasky, Strafe, and Dell all eliminated. So last week's leaders have been taken out in the early stages of match number 4. They were in 3rd coming into this game, but it's not going to be any decent points for them on Kings Canyon just yet. It's Pepega Gibbo that are going to be a nuisance for them.
Yeah, and Pepega Gibbo, again, just showing their dominance in those straight 3v3 team fights. It's not the first time we've seen them win one today against one of the most dominant teams in the lobby. They've now taken down Alliance. They've also, as you say, taken down Nasky, Strafe, and Dell on our first game here on Kings Canyon. So they're going to be full of confidence, as well as the performances they put in games 1 through 3. The fact that they're not only winning battles, but winning battles against some of the top teams in the EMEA region is going to be huge for them.
You can see the amount of teams that have already been able to find their way into the next circle here and are just going to be patient and wait. Quite a lot of teams are already inside, so it's just going to be those teams that are outside now rotating in that are going to find it quite difficult, really, because most of the buildings find themselves occupied. But of course, with Kings Canyon, there's a lot of ledges to hide behind, a lot of objects. You can find yourself working your way into circles, but it's about prediction. It's about seeing where that next circle goes. It's about being near a beacon so that you can make things easy for you as well. You can see the team down by Salvage are going to have a beacon to work with. There is one down by Water Treatment if the team on the southern side would like to use that as well. Other than that, not really many beacons that we're going to see being used. So those two teams, the one by Water Treatment and the one by the Salvage, they're going to be the two that are going to have the real chance of really predicting this next circle. But I'd imagine it's going to be somewhat southern of Market, perhaps, but we'll see what happens. A lot of people are saying that it might be east side of Market as well. You saw a couple of pings that were there available in the riverbed. You see that finish quite often, so perhaps we'll see something there.
I think the fact that we've got teams spread out all around that second circle says that no one's really quite sure where this one is going to be ending. And I think teams are just trying to get into a central position in this circle so that they can rotate to wherever that might go, and then possibly look to gatekeep those teams who unfortunately might fall on the bad side of a ring pull. So a difficult one for them to judge at the moment, the teams in this lobby. But Flavor of the Month are one team who seem to be pretty comfortable with the position they're in. 16 squads remaining, of course, in this game. And Flavor of the Month need to have a big game here. An interesting thing for me is look at the bottom left-hand side of your screen right now. The Revenant has been removed from the comp. So back to the traditional comp that they like to run, which is, of course, the Wraith, the Pathfinder, and the Gibraltar.
Even though the King's Canyon might play better to the Revenant composition, I think they're just reading the lobby here. And they're saying, okay, this is a very different structured lobby to what we were playing last week. This isn't the kind of North American aggressive meta that we saw from last week either. We're not able to take advantage of this Revenant, so we have to go for the true, tried and tested, more traditional composition. And we'll see whether it pays off for them. They're already in the top 16, so better than they did in one of the other games, but they should be able to get into that top 5. I mean, they have the potential to win games as well. We saw what they did in week 1 and how successful they were with ratting out into top 2 and top 3 as well. As you can see, that market is going to be on the edge of this circle. It has shifted east, and a lot of pings towards that river. I wonder, is that team who is very much already there going to be in prime position for this final circle?
There's a few buildings that are still open, but not prime buildings, you would say, in that location. You can see so many pings flying around the area at the moment of teams who are trying to work out where that's going to end. But it looks like it could be a riverbed finish, or maybe in the little craters which are just to the east of those mountains. So teams now going to have that little bit more information to work with. But that's a pretty harsh pull, to be honest with you. If you're looking at that second circle and the third circle compared to the first and second, the third circle compared to the way that the first and second, have pulled, then that's a pretty big shift to the east. So some of those teams who might have thought to position themselves on the deeper side of the circles, like usually is an effective tactic to do, are going to be maybe a little bit upset with how that one's pulled away from them, but they're going to have to work with what they got, and they have to work their way back in towards those next circles.
Whereas both Finalized and Bodyguards here in Market, I mean, I think they'll be somewhat happy with the way the circle's gone. At least they are safe for now, but they probably would have rather Market to themselves. But Market is a pretty big POI, and it often has a couple of teams, and it's whether either of them wants to take this fight. I mean, weaponry, charge rifle available for Legit Lolly. He's just being a nuisance with it at the moment. R99 is in the back pocket, though. And they do have them trapped, I think, in that building. Both of them just seem to be trying to surround the other, trying to pincer and see if they can catch one player off guard. And as soon as they have done that, then maybe that's when they're going to be pushing in. But at the same time, they don't want to be making too much noise and inviting anyone else to this Market party, because then things get a little bit more sticky.
The tough thing for them is the armor situation, and you can see that Finalized have probably got the better of them as far as that's concerned. So that charge rifle becomes even more important at just keeping Finalized at bay and getting that damage done to make sure that if there is a push coming in, that they're going to have almost an equal battle as far as HP is concerned. But this fight's going to go on for a pretty long time here, you would imagine, as both teams aren't confident in pushing each other. You can see Phoenix here, maybe looking to sneak up, maybe looking to be that player to create that opening, get that damage down for his teammates to then push up.
Who's going to have the confidence? That's what it takes sometimes for that one player to be more than happy to push in and try and land some shots, but at the same time, it can be very detrimental if you have a player who is overly confident on the team and says, you know what, screw this, I want to push in, I want to get aggressive, I want to get these kill points, and then suddenly he leaves the two teammates behind. But in a lobby like this, we've got players who are so experienced, veterans in the Apex Legends scene, that we very rarely see huge mistakes. Of course, every team is going to make small mistakes now and then, but Bodyguards seem to want to avoid this fight. But as soon as they get outside of Market, they're greeted by another team, can do a little bit of damage with this charge rifle, and again, just keep another team like at arm's length, keep them away from them, and back into Market they go. And if they're not careful here, they could get stuck between a few teams, so they're going to have to be thinking about this next circle at some point, but for now, at least they're still safe.
But here comes the push here from Finalized. Damage has finally been done, and Nook is trying to be that player to be the aggressor on his team. So Finalized look like they've realized that they can take position here. They've realized they can get the damage down, but again, not able to get a knock, not able to get a finish on one of these players to really commit to it. So the longer that this fight goes on, it means they're just going to be burning through resources. And as that ring is going to be closing in around 1 minute and 10 seconds time, you have to be a little bit careful here. But Triumph Gaming, one team who are trying to rotate here. They're center zone at the moment. They're under the big building just above them, as you can see, but not a lot of armor to work with. And with those shots raining down from above, well, you're going to have to be extremely careful with how they play this. A really difficult position to try and survive.
Yeah, it just seems like they're being shot through every hole possible at the moment. Graceful is going to go down. Can Mady and JMW rescue this one? But I doubt it. They're probably going to be pushed at this point when the team above them knows that they are going to be weakened down to just 2. But perhaps they can hope that the team above will be shot from across the map, so they won't be able to get the kills. Pepega Gibbo are now going to rotate into the next circle here. Matafe was under fire, but at least he's been able to heal up without going down. Otherwise, that would have been a difficult situation for Pepega Gibbo. It is Na'Vi who are the team above them, and they have been able to portal just to see if they can pick up any resources from this death box. They can get whatever they need, and then they can get the hell out of Dodge, because they don't want to be staying down there and getting under the same fire that the team they just took down were.
They're just trying to control as much space as they can at the moment, which is always a smart thing to do on Apex Legends. Even if you have a building, it's not about just sitting up in that building. You've got to control the space around you. You've got to put pressure onto teams who are trying to push into you, and don't let them push up to you without putting some damage down yourself. And if those teams take damage, then you can get knocks. You can get kills quite comfortably by working around that building and working outside of it. And that's what Na'Vi are trying to do right now. But the ring will be closing in around 23 seconds now. Flavor of the month, much better start from them, but 16 squads still remaining. So although it's a solid start for them and they've got position, 16 squads, if they go out now, is still not going to be the KP. And of course, the points on the board for placement that they're going to need.
Yeah, this is the main difference from what we saw in week 1, is that if you had a good start like this in week 1, you were probably finding yourselves into the top 10, whereas now there's just still so many squads left alive in this late game, which is more true to competitive Apex Legends. And I think week 1 was a little bit of a curveball with the shift in meta and the patch changes and whatnot, but things going somewhat back to normality as the circle will shift south. And that is going to be good news for the majority of those teams that have already picked up the real estate down there. There's 2 buildings, 3 buildings that are just about in that circle, but the 2 teams who were fighting in Market are going to have to leave Market soon. It's going to be who leaves first. One team has already exited, and bodyguards are going to be behind them trying to get some shots, but it doesn't look like they're going to be able to knock any of these players, so they are going to have to rotate later than the other team, and that is not going to be a good position for them because they could be gatekept at this point.
Yeah, this is tough. They've got to work their way through some of the tightest chokes on the map as well. And just looking across the armor as well, you've got Messenger on white, you've got Legit Lolly on white as well. Phoenix Oni on the blue as well, and that's the best of a bad bunch. So difficult times here for bodyguards. They're kind of hoping that they might find a position where they can third party a fight or maybe pick up a few discarded items along the way to help them. But for Pepega Gibbo, they're slowly creeping their way up now, playing the edge of circle like they love to do. They do have Zipper on the Gibraltar as well to use that dome to try and rotate in late. But for them, they've got a pretty decent spot here. But they are going to have to make that move in around 30 seconds time. It looks like Matafe is just going back to maybe check that there's not any rats trying to rotate behind them. So looks like there's a plan in place there for Pepega Gibbo as outsiders now set up, but they're going to have to move as well. And here does come that push, and bodyguards need to win this fight if they want to stay alive here on the first game of Kings Canyon. Nook is going to do some damage, and it is going to be big damage coming in here from Finalize. Somehow they do manage to win that fight, and that's going to be big for them as they take out the team who really seem to be struggling.
Yeah, Finalize able to survive. They were able to utilize the Gibby shield thrown down by their opponents, and they had another one as backup just in case anyone was going to push them afterwards. But now they can heal up, they can pick up any resources from these death boxes, and they found themselves into the top 15. So 5 squads eliminated then as we close in on round 4, 27 seconds until we move into that 5th circle. Matafe and the rest of the squad at Pepega Gibbo have found themselves at a decent cliff edge here. Bodyguards were the 16th team, finishing in 16th position, excuse me. The 5th team eliminated. There's some big shots coming out from Biting from Vibing, a team that was really struggling in the early stages of this tournament, but have really picked things up today. But unfortunately, the Revenant will fall, and there might be 2 teammates following him here because Biting is going to be the last one. He does manage to funny hop his way into the circle, but there are people above him. Connects big shot with the Mastiff. Can't find the second. Can he find the third? No, he can't. Doesn't look like he's going to win that engagement. Elsewhere, Na'Vi are able to probably pick up a member. No, it looks like they're struggling as well, and it just seems like they're everything is against all these teams that are down low at the moment. Pepega Gibbo taking the height advantage, Mark, as we're down to now just 11 squads.
And this is where Pepega Gibbo are so good. They win that initial big fight that they have to do. They time those third parties so well on the edge of the circle. And Matafe here with that scout is just doing so much damage on the Wraith. You can just see him dropping shields, dropping damage to anyone who's trying to move across the map at the moment. And there's so many death boxes in front of him that Pepega Gibbo, for all the damage they've done, have cleared out enough space to now move up. And there is a very cozy looking player sneaking inside of that build, just inside the circle, who might be able to red out a few positions here. But again, Matafe on the Evo shield now, going to be leveling that one up, and the push now coming in from Pepega Gibbo. They take a solid spot here as they also take down Vaves from Alliance. So I think that's actually Alliance been eliminated now. Not sure if one player managed to sneak out in all of that, but no, you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, Alliance eliminated again here by Pepega Gibbo.
Well, good news for Flavor of the Month fans as they found their way into the top 10, so they're starting to pick things up after a pretty disastrous first 3 matches. SJP2 now under an insane amount of fire here, only white shields to work with as well, so this is not going to be a good position for them. It's just going to be a case of whether they can survive, as they're in prime position in terms of where this next circle is going, but it looks like a couple of players want to take this position from them. They're down to just 2 now. Denze is going to be under pressure. It's Pepega Gibbo yet again pushing at the right time, saying, hey, that looks like a cozy little spot for the final circle. We're going to take that one off you. Insane wingman shots coming out. Matafe takes down 1. Pepega Gibbo just asserting their dominance on this lobby.
Yeah, this is just straight bullying here from Pepega Gibbo. Every single team they push, they are destroying at the moment here on the first game of Kings Canyon. Now they're coming under fire. You can see some grenades being dropped in front of them, a couple of arc stars. Can he get the bat off before he takes the damage? Yes, he does. So Pepega Gibbo will be able to survive that onslaught. You can see Matafe's actually gone down. I say they survived, but it looks like they will actually be taken down. Cleve now from Major Pushers is going to be moving in to pick up some KP of his own. And now we're down to our final 6 squads. Flavor of the Month were one of those teams who managed to pick up some KP along the way, and that's massive for them.
Just 2 of them left, though. Pierre and Taylor are going to be there and available. Noth went down to the ring. I don't know whether that was a disconnect or whether he's just disconnected after going down. But either way, they just have to work with the 2 now. LG are in such a good spot at the moment, but they can be shot from several different angles, so they just have to be very careful here. Seems like Watson fences are being shot down every time they put them up. Third Impact, well, there's 2 players alive here, Mark, but they have nothing in terms of help or ways to heal themselves up. Maybe they do have the ability to heal themselves up and they're just opting not to because of any sound cues. I don't know, but it doesn't look good for them. But at least they've been able to worm their way into the top 6.
Yeah, Finalized have managed to worm their way into this position as well. And you can see there is a team above them on the height, and they're trying to just be as quiet as physically possible not to give away that position. It's going to be LG who are on top of that building. And you can see Flavor of the Month now coming under a little bit of pressure, and they're going to have to make that rotation now. Taylor, is he going to go for the pull? Are they going to try and walk this one in with the circle? We'll find out in around 1 second's time as that ring is going to start to move.
Ring starts to move. We got a little split screen of a battle unfolding right in front of our eyes, and you can see the ring is going to be closing in now, so it is now or never. But you're pushing right into a Gibby ult, and you're pushing into a Mastiff as well. Major pushes just with the 1 player remaining. Wraith is just going to go into the void to try and survive here. Can she get a revive? You might be able to get a res if no one else is pushing them. We're down to just 4. Flavor of the Month were eliminated under all of that fire, but maybe Major Pushers can do something here because they might not be pushed.
We're going to have to bide their time as we go into a tri-split. I'm going to call this one. I don't work in production. I don't know what this is called, but it's going to give you 3 different point of views. Here, as you can see, Gambit in the top right-hand side of your screen, Luminosity on the bottom right, and of course, Major Pushers there. The final player alive is going to be able to get some reses off as well. So, 4 squads are still alive. And this is 3 of them. It's going to be a little bit of quiet now before we do get into that final bit of action to decide who is going to take our first game here on Kings Canyon. Of course, our 4th game of the day as well.
Kings Canyon. You could call it that. It works. Luminosity certainly have the advantage in terms of the height, and they have the 2 maxed out Evo shields to work with, but Gambit certainly in a good position as well with 3 purples. But it looks like Gambit are taking a little sniff at Luminosity, seeing if they can get a couple of free shots off of them, just do a little bit of damage. Rugby is taken all the way down and is going to have to bat up here. As long as he can survive, I'm sure he will be fine. Yes, he will. And there is the other team just waiting, biding their time. More than happy to be patient here are finalized. You can see they know where their next circle is going to be. It's a tiny little circle. It's just going to be down below the team of Luminosity Gaming. So Luminosity have to go the least distance to this circle. So you could argue they are in the most favorable position, but also they're going to have the most eyes on them. It's just going to depend on whether those teams want to focus getting into the circle or getting kills, as rifts are going to be placed. Gambit are going to back off. They've got that portal in position. We'll see what happens in these next 8 seconds mark. And Bombardment comes out early. Very, very early indeed. We'll see if anyone can survive it.
Yeah, Gambit and Luminosity here on top and inside of that building. Major pushers now having to make their move in, and you can see Ranches here is going to try and get aggressive with that Prowler. They all have fully leveled Evo shields as well, and Ravo... excuse me, Ranches is going to be doing the damage that he can. Now we're going to see Sanya dropping down, LG making their move in towards this end zone. No massive shots are hitting, but finally they are going to hit, and it looks like Luminosity Gaming will take the final battle here and will take the first game there on Kings Canyon. The high ground once again proving to be the deciding factor in that late game. Fantastic stuff there from Luminosity.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's a case of just them seeing that finish before and they predicted that final circle perfectly, because it was just right underneath them where they were residing for the majority of that final circle. But no other team was confident enough to push them and try and take them off that hotspot. That was the difference that we saw in the first few games today, is that teams, when they saw that kind of prime position, they said, hey, I want that, I want to take that. That's what Pepega Gibbo were doing so often, but unfortunately, Pepega Gibbo got taken out a little bit earlier, so they weren't able to try to assert their dominance like they were on everyone else in the lobby. But a really well-played game from LG, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to pick up the victory there.
Yeah, of course, and this is a new look LG. We saw these players coming together. They played up under a few different names, but it looks like they're, according to what we've got in front of us, anyway, that Luminosity Gaming will be the roster, of course, that just won that game. A little bit of a change from what we saw back in Poland, and not surprising, to be honest with you, with some of the disappointing performances they had put in over the LGS season so far. So here are the highlights again, and this was the crazy battle that went down early, with 3 different teams dropping on the same spot in the map, and of course there can only be one winner of that. But Pepega Gibbo again putting up lots of KP, lots of damage on this game, but unfortunately for them couldn't quite get in towards that last moments of those end games.
And this is where like matches 5 and 6 become interesting, because you've got teams like Pepega Gibbo who have been picking up so much kill points, picking up so much placement points, that they aren't going to be particularly scared about pushing teams. And that's not going to be good news for those teams that are just on the brink of relegation, because they're going to be trying to kind of eke out every placement point they can, or they might be saying, okay, we want to get aggressive now. But if you run into another team that's also being aggressive, then that's not going to end well if their shot is just better than yours. As we see a squirrel on the map. If you remember, that's what we rightly named them earlier, if someone is in a tree as a rat. But it was a good game to watch. It was certainly a little bit fast-paced right at the start, with a load of teams dropping near each other. It slowed down with 16 squads getting into, what, the third to last circle. Then, of course, the pace picked up, as it always does as we get into the last one. But it was Luminosity, ultimately, who had the high ground, they had the positioning, and they had the gun skill to boot.
Yeah, Rugby with some big, massive shots there at the end to close out that game. Luminosity Gaming will take the first game here on Kings Canyon. 2 more games to go, though. Don't go anywhere. We're going to go for another break now before we get into the penultimate game. We'll see you in just a sec. Welcome back, everybody, to the GLL Masters Summer, and Week 2's action has been fast and furious, and with just 2 games to go on Kings Canyon. Dan, see what I did there? I was thinking about that the whole time. Showing no signs whatsoever of slowing down.
I mean, you say it's been fast and furious, but if we compare it to last week, this is kind of like a very much slower-paced sequel to the Fast and Furious. This is Fast and Furious 2, where people are more than happy to get to the late circles. And I'm okay with it, because this is how Apex has been played for so long. It's going to take a lot more kind of brain power to be able to know when to rotate and where to be pushing and which angles to be looking at all of these different things. Whereas Week 1 just felt like a bit of a mess that unfolded, and it was just a killing spree for so many teams. But this is how the leaderboard looked after that particular game. LG picking up 24 placement points alongside 6 kills as well. Pepega Gibbo finishing in second. But down those bottom 5, they're the ones I'm always looking at. Bodyguards, BDS finishing in the bottom 2, and we'll see how it looks like in the overall leaderboards. Pepega Gibbo still top, North still second, but look at the gap between first and second. Pepega Gibbo with over a 40-point lead now, Mark.
Yeah, big lead for them, and a decent game for them on the first game of Kings Canyon as well. But as you say, the bottom 5, these are the ones who need to put in performances here to stay in the Alpha lobby. That is Third Impact, FigVam, Flavor of the Month, Team Elitist, and Bodyguards down at the bottom there. They need big games, and for BDS Esports, Dead Inside and Vibing, they're going to be looking over their shoulders at that kill feeder all points to see where those teams are if they're picking up kills. So a nervy time ahead for those teams. But from our first game there on Kings Canyon, of course, it was a little bit faster paced in those early battles, I should say, for contention on spots. Maybe a few of these teams haven't been in the same scrim lobbies that we have seen previously on World's Edge, where there was a little bit more of a kind of a gentleman's agreement on different POIs and drop spots. So I'll be interested to see if that does change up a little bit here as we get into our next game and see if everyone finds their own comfortable spot to work from.
Yeah, I mean, Kings Canyon wouldn't have been scrimmed as much as World's Edge in recent weeks, that's for sure, but now it's being reintroduced into certain competitive tournaments like this, for example. I'm sure that people will start to be playing it more, and you're completely right. After the first game, you'll get an idea of if you've dropped somewhere and there's another team with you, you now make the decision of, do we want to take this 50-50, or are we going to give this up and drop somewhere else? Because the risk of changing your drop is, of course, you might bump into another team that you might not know if they've dropped there. So you might have to just be very reactive with your drops, and that can sometimes go against you, or it can go for you. A team like Alliance, for example, are very much a team who like to react to what everyone else has done, but look at that circle. Hello, those who dropped in Airbase. You are going to have a slow but fun game, because you're going to be able to guarantee yourself at least probably top 10, because you're not have to worry about rotating across the map. Instead, you can loot up, you can hunker down, and you can prepare. You can say the same for the team up in Runoff and down in Gauntlet as well. Those are going to be in the prime positions to work with something. However, those teams that are all the way on the east side of the map, once they see where that circle is, they are not going to be particularly happy.
And Bodyguards, one of those teams who are in the relegation zone as it stands, have already managed to lose one of their players. So it's going to be a slow game for them as they try and get their teammate back in the game. And again, Contestion going down on their drop. And when you're coming out of things with an Evo Shield, a Sentinel, and a Spitfire, it couldn't really go much worse for you. Although the Sentinel is a little bit of an unspoken hero, in my opinion.
Yeah, it can do some real damage in the right hands, but it has to be the right hands. Not every player can use it successfully, but I'd say that majority in this lobby are pretty decent, whatever is in their hands. But Bodyguards aren't going to be able to recover this banner, and as you say, it's not going to be good for them being in 20th. They are dead last at the moment on just 12 points. So that has them, what, they are 16 points behind 14th place. So they need a decent game 5 here to give them a chance of getting out of that relegation zone. Otherwise, they'll be finding themselves in that Bravo lobby.
Natsuki, Strafe, and Dell here work their way over to the little bunker town. Up where the tower is, just to the left-hand side of Dell here. We're watching the point of view from, so they're going to be pretty good and postured up to maybe gatekeep any teams who are going to be rotating in from the west side of the map. And with the zone that pulls so deep here, you can kind of position yourself because you know it's going to end up around the airbase runoff area. So you're going to be watching out for those teams rotating in, rotating through bunker, through the bridge. And you can kind of position yourself pretty early to execute a game plan here. North, another one of those teams who, as we say, had a really, really strong showing on World's Edge, are set up in a pretty decent position themselves. 2 purples and a white to work with on Tashin. So I think we might be seeing a little bit of a slower game here as those teams kind of work their way across.
Yeah, there has been 2 deaths, but neither squad's wiped just yet. Nerzy went down, and it's going to be LG who are able to pick up that kill point, and now they can start to traverse the map and get their way closer to this next circle. They do have a little bit of a way to go, and there is a possibility they will run into a couple of teams on their way, but I'm sure they are well aware of that. Watching the routes from the sky, you can see quite a lot of teams down by water treatment as well. 3 teams to be precise. Make that even 4 that could potentially run into each other. One of those teams was Bodyguards, who were just running away from the action. And we can see that Pega Gibbo here are just going to be very, very patient. They're in prime position for the circle. They don't really need to worry about too much. But LG still making their way towards the next circle.
LG involved in a little bit of a battle as well. You can see shots being rained in on them, and Sanya's going to have to try and move his body across this map as quickly as possible to avoid those shots. And it looks like they're more interested in trying to achieve that rotation than get involved in a fight themselves. So you can see LG, again, trying to recreate the success that they had from the last game by rotating early and getting into a good a position as possible. The only problem for them, it was such a big pull from where they were. I believe they drop over at the map room, one of the new POIs on the map. However, by dropping there, you obviously do get that information of where teams are setting up, where teams are rotating, so you can adjust your rotation accordingly. But SJP2, another team who need points in this game to stay in the alpha lobby come week 3, are the team who are going to be ballooning to try and beat Luminosity on this rotation.
The teams in the bottom 5, Third Impact, Flavor of the Month, FigVam, Team Elitist, and Bodyguards. They're the ones who really need to take advantage of these double points in this alpha lobby if they are going to be relegated back into Bravo, because the bigger picture is you have to have the overall points to get into the finals. You still get points if you are in Bravo, you're just not going to get as much. And then after week 4, if you are in the top 20, of course, if you are in those prime positions to get into the finals, you don't have to go into that last chance qualifier. Outsiders had one member who was knocked down, but at least they're able to res him, so they don't have to worry too much about that. But they're in one of these top positions here. They were able to land early, the circle is heading their way, and they should be able to get to the late game. So it's just about being a nuisance and griefing those that are trying to join them here.
Some shots down towards that charge tower as well, managing to do a little bit of damage there with the scout, but not too much, not able to get that knock and get any potential kills on the board. 20 squads still remaining as ring number 1 will be closing in 2 minutes' time. So not a lot of action to speak from, and a lot of time for these teams to rotate across. SJP2 now making their move up onto the high ground. And this could be a team who potentially could get into a battle with Outsiders who were up on that high ground. As you can see, it looks like the pings have come in of where that team is, and beautiful shots down, and the charge rifle was good enough to drop the shields, and the R301 was enough to hit some flesh damage as well. Alliance now making their way through the skies as well. But again, Alliance with a long way to go here on their rotation, as we do slowly see those teams making their way in now towards that airbase area.
Outsiders just under so much fire here. They were probably feeling comfortable at airbase when they were able to get there so early, but now look at the amount of teams that are around them, and they don't have the armor to work with. As Flavor of the Month are now getting aggressive, trying to do as much damage as they can. Gibby body blocking back into the bubble there. It was Alliance, it was Hackies, but I think he did enough to get them back into the bubble. Maybe they could have got the res, not just yet, as Flavor of the Month are trying to take them out. They're trying to utilize that Caustic Ultimate to get away, but it's not going to happen. Alliance are going to be the first team wiped off the server, and it's Flavor of the Month, a team who desperately need these kill points, who are able to pick them up.
So Alliance, again, not having the best of performances here on Kings Canyon, just doesn't seem to be going their way so far today. And Flavor of the Month for them, we said they needed a big game and we needed a big fight for them to win in order to regain that confidence, and they've done exactly that now by taking out Alliance. Now they can get a little bit of loot on board as well when they can make their way back in, but for Flavor of the Month, that's KP on the board, that's points in the bank, and that's going to help them move out of those relegation spots. So North now, another team who have been superb so far today in week number 2 action here in the GLL Masters Summer, set up on this high ground. We've seen them pretty much holding this down for the majority of this penultimate game of the day, and some beautiful Prowler shots as well. And the burst fire being used, as now we see the switch over to the fully auto.
Well, off-screen, Outsiders were taken down by Pepega Gibbo. So, sorry, did I say Offsiders? Outsiders are taken down by Pepega Gibbo. They are offside now. They won't be a part of this lobby. They fall in 19th place. And it's Pepega Gibbo again just showing the aggression, showing that if they see anyone in any sort of power position, they steal that away from them. They said, all right, we see you, Outsiders. We see you in a decent position here at Airbase. We're taking that off you. And they picked up even more kills. They didn't lose anyone in the time being. I think Matafi went down, but he has been rezzed now. But North have eyes on someone here just bubbling up, so they won't be able to take any shots just yet. But everything kind of unfolding here at Airbase as we expected. And then there's a few teams who are going to be late to the party, just straggling on in. There's a couple up by Runoff. There's, of course, Flavor of the Month, who are down to the southern side of the map after taking down Alliance. They're going to be the ones who will struggle to get into Airbase, but we'll see where the actual next circle is going to be.
There's a couple of teams rotating in the north of the map as well, who are kind of shadowing each other. So it'll be interesting to see if those two teams do get involved in a fight. North in a position to potentially cut those off when they do come in as well. And you can see the team underneath them. They have managed to do enough damage to think about maybe making a move in, but one team who are going to be making a move in, and there isn't a lot of ground to be working with, is Finalize. I'm not trying to be quiet here, just walking up these stairs, trying to see if that ground is open, and it looks like they might have a spot inside that circle. And of course, they don't have the information, which is always key in any game, especially in Apex Legends, that next ring will be moving away from them towards Airbase. So they might be pretty comfortable with where they are at the moment, but they don't know that they're going to have to move again pretty soon.
Vibin, the only team, I think, now with a Revenant. The other two seem to have switched off. Bodyguards got rid of their Revenant, and Flavor of the Month, of course, got rid of theirs after World's Edge 2. So they are the last survivors with this particular meta. I mean, this is the meta we thought was going to be, having the crypto available as well. But the totem does go down for Vibin, but they push straight out. And there's going to be a lot of damage on the other side on that split screen on the right-hand side, as you see. It's whether they can actually pinpoint where that player is or whether they can just utilize the totem to get away at this point. It's always going to be something that you have to be aware of. Who's going to be pushing you? Who's going to be seeing whether you are going to get aggressive with the totem? But it was finalized on the other side. Vibin just seem to be under a lot of fire at the moment. It just seems like they're trying to
push in here. They've hit the crypto ult, the MP, to try and drop those shields. Now they're pushing in using the Revenant ult as well, but it's going to be sent almost immediately back. So Finalize doing a pretty good job of being able to hold off this push pretty convincingly, to be honest with you. And it looks like, even though that portal was set up maybe to initiate a second wave of damage after the damage might have been done from the Revenant ultimate, it looks like they didn't get the damage that they want done, so they're just going to slow things down here and maybe think twice about that push.
Yeah, I like how Vibin did that. They popped the Revenant ultimate, but only one player used the totem to try and almost gain information, find out where they were, push towards them. And as soon as he had that information, the other two then used the totem as well. They weren't able to do anything with the push, but I do like the idea of just kind of staggering when you're using those totems to try and confuse your opponents and try and catch them off guard by pushing from different angles. But Finalize doing really, really well to survive that, and ultimately the Revenant ultimates haven't done much in today's lobbies.
Here comes the push though. Bytin is going to be trying to chase down this player, can't land the Mastiff shot, and he's going to have to warn him up. Looking at the kill feed though, Triumph and Graceful has managed to take down Claws from Na'Vi, so the fights are starting to kick off, as you would imagine. The full auto Prowler in the R99 looking pretty good here on Niazen. He's going to have to win this battle to keep his team alive. It's a 1v1 situation. He's only got around 30 HP to work with, but the third party is going to come in. The Wraith and the Pathfinder, they appear out of nowhere here for Dead Inside, and it's going to be Stanley Sejama and Disbelief who managed to pick up some free KP.
Yeah, Dead Inside, they were just licking their lips, I think, when they heard that battle unfold, because they were close enough to do some real damage. North now getting aggressive on the team in front of them at Airbase, but backing off when the time felt right. Right into the void goes RPR just to get away here, get back to their vantage point, because they are in a really good position. I mean, we saw what North did in games 1 and 2 on World's Edge. They fell off a little bit in 3 and 4 on our first game of Kings Canyon, but here they are in a position where they can be a real nuisance to those that are below them at Airbase. They just have to be careful they don't get pushed from their right-hand side, but it seems like they've been covering it fairly successfully, as Flavor of the Month, the team that, again, is in trouble of potentially being relegated if they don't pick things up in the last 2 games, find themselves in also a good spot on the edge of Airbase. They are probably going to have to find their ways more central, but Pierre under a little bit of fire, and they are having to use up a little bit of resources just to shield up here. They want to be careful they don't use too much, otherwise they might find themselves thin when they actually get into fights later on.
Still not there as well with the Evo shield on the Gibraltar as well, just trying to level that one up. Still at around 340 damage to do, so hoping that a few teams are going to get involved in some battles that he can do some damage to and maybe get some downs himself. But SJP2 here, you can see right deep into this circle, right at the back of Airbase, just using those crates and And landing shift as well to create a little bit of cover. And Dead Inside now trying to land some shots onto this team who have been forced to use that Gibraltar bubble and try and rotate away from this fight after the damage was done. But it looks like Dead Inside want to try and finish off these kills if they can. But they've done enough here to hold their position at least. The problem is for them, they can't hold that for much longer because they're going to have to move in as well in the next 30 seconds or so.
Yep, time against them, and that's why they are moving very quickly here, and they might be greeted by another team, a couple of pings just to say, look, be careful, there could be a team watching here, or they could be saying, actually, this is a position we can use as cover, as that is going to be in the circle, and they certainly can reside there if they choose to. It would be somewhat vulnerable for some well-placed grenades, though, so they just have to be careful, but of course, Wattson Ultimate can go up to protect them if they feel like they are in danger, as that circle is going to be closing now. There's only one team outside of it. But they should have somewhat of a safe rotation in. They just have to go all the way around the canyon. As in 20 seconds, we're going to see where this next circle is going to be heading, Mark.
We're going to see Team Elitist here under a little bit of pressure themselves, and they've got a long way to travel in the next 2 minutes or so to work towards where that circle is going to go. And it looks like it's pulling really deep in towards airbase. So all those teams who are set up in the buildings at the moment in airbase and runoff area are going to have to make that transition towards those little platforms at the back. Shots coming in here with the Mastiff. Big damage here onto the Pathfinder. The only problem is he's going to be the last player alive. His teammates are going to fall. There's going to be BDS Esports, who have been a little bit quiet today, who do finally get a little bit of a something going their way with those KP. But again, not in the best position as far as the rotation is concerned. And North now, having picked up some KP of themselves, are going to be swooping in for a little bit of loot to try and fight.
Bit of a double whammy though. BDS, they took out Team Elitist, who are one of those in the bottom 5, so that just separates BDS from a couple of those teams who are in that relegation zone, as North under a little bit of fire here, but should have a little spam through this smoke, see if they can see anyone just yet. But again, another difficult rotation for them. I think at this point, anyone who's not in airbase is going to struggle, and I think they've probably realized that, and they may have to start looking for kill points rather than placement points, as Major pushes down to just 2. Caustic gas is there, but also they've got the bubble available to them as well. Maliwan desperately just trying to survive here, but at least he's got the gas to work with. BDS down to just 1. Can Kramer do anything here? No, he can't. That's BDS eliminated, and we're down to just 11. North now getting aggressive. They're trying to utilize the auto shotgun. They've got a Mastiff in the back pocket as well. Plenty to go around. Kill points available for them, and North have come away victorious in that particular battle.
Yeah, the EVA 8 not being able to get that damage done. The devotion in the hands here of North now, in the hands of Mandy, so he's going to be pretty good for everything he could possibly need. With all these teams dropping, it means your loot situation can be fantastic if you're last to that party. Speaking of which, we see another team eliminated. FigFam just gone down there to the hands of LG, I believe. So Luminosity Gaming looking pretty good here. The difficulty for these teams at the moment, you're looking at that circle. Heads or tails, which one of these runways do you take? Do you take the one to the south? Do you take the one to the north? Or do you hope that you can rotate between the two? Because there's one zip line, and if you get it wrong, you were in trouble.
I've just thought of an incredible Gibby buff. Imagine if you could just have a bubble surround your Gibby, so you could go across a zip line and have a bubble just like a little Zorb, and then you could just roll across either side. I mean, it would be way OP, but it would certainly be fun. As Pepe Gibbo have flipped to the north side of these two little, what do we call these? I mean, like, they're just
runways.
Runways, yeah, I guess they are runways, you're right. But certainly it's a difficult circle, and there we go. They have predicted it successfully. This one closest to them is going to be the circle it's going to be ended on. That's where it ends quite often, certainly in my experience, so they have predicted it well. We're down to just 8 squads at this point. North do have such a good vantage point, but Bombardment will come out. They're going to be able to do some real damage here to the teams below them.
So Triumph, another one of those teams who have made it in towards this late game. Not the best of armors to work with, but they do have the Evo at least on the Wraith player. It's going to be made low. So he's got a little bit of time to work with, as those teams are going to be fighting around that have unfortunately been caught on the far side of this circle on the other runway and deep in towards airbase. You can see those fights going down as well. The Gibraltar bubble right in the distance, and for North here, they're kind of setting up and hoping some teams are going to be rotating in that they can pick off using that high ground advantage. But after that, you can see they're trying to plan where they want to rotate, how they're going to move, and now you're going to see the Wraith portal going out to make sure they can make that rotation, as well as the Wattson popping that ultimate accelerant to make sure that when they get into that spot, they can immediately get that down, and then hopefully they can survive those grenades that might be thrown towards their direction.
I mean, I'm just concerned about the length of these runways, really. No normal aeroplane is going to be able to take off from that, in my particular
Not a normal
opinion.
aeroplane.
But yeah, I know we're in the Apex Legends
game,
world.
man.
And, yeah, I know, yeah, but still, I'm just concerned.
Look at those things in the background. There's a giant dinosaur, like, walking around a Titan.
Well, I'd be concerned for them on the runway. You know,
I feel like your concerns are
obstacles
extremely misplaced
everywhere.
right now.
At the moment, you've just got to be careful with all these hazards around, but Gambit Esports are heading towards a battle here on the opposite runway. They're able to get some decent damage, but they are down to just 2 members, so they have to be very careful. One member is just going to portal back, but it is going to be in the ring. Noth goes down on the side of Flavor of the Month, but it's just going to be Artico here having to push across if he wants to survive, and SJP2 have found themselves in the perfect position in a plane that will survive, and it doesn't matter where you are on the runway, they are in the best spot right now.
SJP2 then, surrounded by different players and trying to hold off the pushes. Beautiful shots there with the EVA 8. 42 damage as well, and manages to get the crack onto that shield to take that player down to flesh damage. And having a Peacekeeper in the back pocket is going to be huge in these close quarter situations. But North are another team who have managed to take the high ground here, and they've got the devotion to work with as well. The Gibby bubble's going to come out, and Mandy has to retreat to the top of this plane here to get a position again to fight another day. Great escape from him. Astanya now goes down to the hands of the EVA 8, and it's a 2-player situation here for North, and they make it work, and North pushing in at just the right time. North once again take the game here, and that is now 3 out of 5 games that North have been crowned champion.
Yeah, North played that so well throughout the entirety of that game as well. They got to airbase early, they got the height, they got the prime position in airbase, so then as soon as they saw where that circle was going to be going, they were able to rotate a little bit later than everyone, do some real damage to people that had to push in a little bit early because they were a lot lower, they didn't have anything to hide behind, they didn't have the cliffs to work with, and then the final fight was relatively comfortable, even though in that aircraft is always going to be a phenomenal position because you're not be able to shot by any teams coming in. Once the other teams have been eliminated, North were just on top, and they had the high ground. High ground is everything in fights like that, and that's their 3rd victory of the day. They were in Bravo last week, Mark, but now they're dominating these alpha lobbies.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happened in the qualifiers with North, because obviously things didn't quite go to plan, but come week 2, things certainly are going to plan for those 3 gentlemen, as I say, they win their 3rd game out of 5 here, and will only extend their lead potentially at the leaderboards. Pepega Gibbo, of course, finding out for that top spot for ending up top of the table. But here are the highlights from that game that we just saw. The interesting thing for me is it's one of the most predictable rings we've seen so far in all of the games that we've seen so far, and one of the most predictable rings maybe that we've seen in quite some time on Apex Legends. So much of that first circle over that ocean, you know it's going to be pulling deep in there, and it seems the players who made that early rotation were rewarded, of course, and North were one of those teams set up on that high ground for so long, and then the play towards the end for them, you have to say they executed extremely well, even when Mandy had to retreat to the top of that plane to get away in that moment where he was under a little bit of pressure, using that grapple to do so. He executed it superbly.
Yeah, North were phenomenal there, but it was also some teams who picked up some big points. I mean, Flavor of the Month did a lot better than they had in previous games, so that match 5 will certainly give them a boost to potentially getting out of that relegation zone. But a couple of teams that were in the relegation zone, they didn't have a good game. They now are relying on match 6 to pick up upward of around maybe even 30 points just to try and survive, and that is not an easy thing to do. You have to be winning a game with kill points to be able to achieve something like that.
Yeah, you need a huge, huge performance, and we'll have to wait and see in our final game if some of those teams down at the bottom of the table can do that. Speaking of which, we're going to go for a quick break now, but when we get back, of course, we will have our final game of the day coming your way. It's the final game at Kings Canyon. We'll see you in just a few. And welcome back, everybody, to the GLL Masters Summer. And we now have just one game remaining in Week 2's action. Dan, we've got one more game here on Kings Canyon to decide who's going to be top, but also who is going to be those teams who unfortunately will be falling down to the Bravo Division.
Yeah, a couple of big teams in contention for being relegated as well, so that's going to be a scary factor. But we can take a look at the scoreboard then after Match 11 and how that looked. North with a mammoth 56 points. But a couple of teams down low. Vibin with 0, Alliance with 0 as well. Bodyguards, another team that has been kind of there or thereabouts and struggling today. Team Elitist also struggling as well. So some of the bottom teams weren't able to pick up any points in match number 5 and are going to need huge games in match number 6 if they are going to be able to find themselves with a chance of staying out of relegation. But when we look at the overall leaderboards, we can see how everyone currently looks. So down in that bottom 5 then, Vibin, Third Impact, Figvam, Team Elitist, and Bodyguards. So Bodyguards are 22 points from safety. And when we look at the last game, a couple of teams that finished in 5th and 6th finished with around 20 points. So that's how difficult this is going to be for the likes of Bodyguards. But at the top, Papega Gibbo, 146. North just behind them on 144. And both of those two teams neck and shoulders, head and shoulders above the rest of the lobby. But Triumph and Gambit in 3rd and 4th.
So Luminosity, pretty good performance from them this week as well, sat in 5th place. But I think we should actually put in context that bottom 5 a little bit, because although we say, 20 points is quite a lot, you got to remember, double points here in the alpha lobby. So when you're using the normal scoring format and you're thinking 20 points is a win and 10, 12 kills, that sort of thing, it's not quite the same here for these teams. If they can have one of those games where they just pop off, it could be the likes of BDS, Dead Inside Outsiders, like you say, who might fall into that bottom 5. I mean, look at Major Pushers. They were rooted near the bottom of the table just a few moments ago, and now they've made their way back up into 12th place, still very much in danger of being dragged into that demotion conversation. But a big game for them has lifted them up, the same, as you say, with the likes of Flavor of the Month. They were in that bottom 5 for the majority of today. However, the big game that they just had coming in 2nd place was in KP, and all of a sudden they're up to 11th.
It's going to be, for Bodyguards and Elitists, they just need to find more kills, to be honest. Like, 2 kills and 3 kills across 5 matches just isn't good enough. They've been eliminated very early on, time and time again, and they can put it down to RNG, they can put it down to bad luck, but ultimately they just haven't been able to win that opening engagement enough times. If they can get that first engagement victorious and they can pick up those 3 kill points, then that will give them such good momentum going into the rest of the game. But realistically, I'm looking at Elitist and Bodyguards probably out of this, but there's still a chance for the likes of Vibin and Third Impact. Figvam are kind of in between. They're going to need a really big game, but it's going to be down to whether like Dead Inside or BDS have a bad game, almost, for their chances of trying to get out of those demotion spots.
And Third Impact were one of those teams who impressed us so much in our first week as well, so somewhat of a surprise to see them really struggling here in week number 2. Maybe that adjustment back with a lot of teams running Watson again has kind of impacted the way that they wanted to play, the same way that Flavor of the Month have had to adjust their competition from what they were playing over on World's Edge to what they're now playing here on Kings Canyon. And it is interesting to see how teams are having to revert, and maybe when you've got multiple teams not running Revenant doesn't become as prevalent, doesn't become as important and as effective in these games as it has previously. But for North, I mean, they've had a fantastic day so far. 3 out of the 5 games they have managed to take home not only a huge amount of points, but the win as well. So for North, having come out of the Bravo division into the Alpha division this week, they really have announced themselves to the competition.
Yeah, I don't think that they would have even expected themselves to come into the Alpha Division and win 3 games, let alone 2 back-to-back, but we've already got an early engagement. It is Papega Gibbo under fire, and it's going to be Na'Vi on the other side. Na'Vi have been able to get the first one, but the rest of the squad are going to come through. Kuya is going to fall, but so does Claws. Claws will be taken down, and the first member is going to be eliminated from both teams. Actually, I say that, Papega Gibbo got the Resurrect, excuse me. So it's just going to be 1 Na'Vi member eliminated, and Papega Gibbo doing really well just to group up there and ensure they weren't letting a man fall alone.
Yeah, and it was just a man dropping solo there, and I wonder if Papega Gibbo had kind of recognized that situation, because Papega Gibbo, of course, were the team who were dropping over at Octane's Gauntlet. So maybe they realized there was a solo player here for Na'Vi that they could take advantage of by dropping onto him. So now we're going to see that rotation away to the Gauntlet area, and maybe that's a little bit of a smarter play than what we imagined initially from Papega Gibbo, recognizing a game situation and taking advantage of it.
Well, at least the res will come through, and the dropship is going to bring Claws right back into the game. And now for Na'Vi, they just have to make sure that they protect him coming back in. But I don't think Papega Gibbo will take a second sniff at this. I think they probably dipped out after they were able to get a little bit of loot, but I guess we'll see. Na'Vi seem to be okay, so it's not been the end of the world for them. Oh, as I say that, no, okay. Nasky, Dell, and Strafe say, hey, is that a dropship coming in? Is that someone being respawned onto the map? Well, let's go get a little bite of that.
We are seeing some players fall early on here, but no team wipes to speak of so far. If we could take an opportunity to open up that overhead map when we do get a chance to see where that ring is going to be pulling. And you can see it's almost a similar zone to what we saw before. I think it will pull a little bit away from airbase, however, more towards maybe the Gauntlet area, or just outside of airbase. But again, for the teams who are already set up around airbase, and for Del, Strafe, and Nasky, who are on our stream at the moment, you can see that they're trying to make their way over to maybe think about posturing themselves open to a position where they're going to be cutting off teams who are trying to rotate in from the west side of the map and pick up some KP along the way.
I think you're right. I think this one probably won't be necessarily an airbase finish, and I think other people can... I mean, in general, Kings Canyon is easier to predict circles than World's Edge. At least it has been for me personally, both playing and watching. But it certainly looks like it is going to be more southwest than it was previously. But again, it is just going to be those teams who drop on the western side of the map who are going to be in more of an advantageous position, and those on the eastern side are just going to be kind of puffing out their cheeks, saying, like, give us a break. I mean, we just want a comfortable rotation. We would have even taken a central circle, a southern circle perhaps, but one all the way over on the west side isn't going to help anyone. But Bodyguards, the team who are at a potential chance of being relegated from this division. They are slap bam bottom at the moment. And as I said, they need around a 30-point game, and that's if the teams above them don't get any points. They definitely don't want to be pushed by a team like Papega Gibbo, because Papega Gibbo, oh my god, I've messed it up for the first time today.
You were so close.
They are relentless. They get aggressive, they get in your face, and they do not allow you to just run away freely.
They also take portals to try and chase down the final members of your team, and that is exactly what is going to happen. So, a little bit of a poor play, I have to say, from the team who were engaging in that fight, and that, unfortunately for them, will be the end of their day's action for Papega Gibbo, though. However, that just means more KP on the board for them. However, one player did manage to actually stay alive in all of that fight, as we still do have 20 teams remaining. Nasky, Strafe, and Dell now involved in a battle. The Alternator is going to be used, and the L-Star is going to be lighting up things here. And Strafe manages to get the finish onto this player. Can he get the armor swap in time to help out his teammates? He can't, though. The shots managed to take him down. I believe it's Third Impact who are actually involved in this fight. Now we're going to see Na'Vi being involved in the fight as well. And Claw's trying to come in. Doesn't have any armor to work with by the looks of things, though. And it will be Na'Vi who do manage to actually win out that fight. So even though they only had 2 players to be a part of that fight, they timed the third party well enough that they had the advantage in the battle, and they will pick up KP along the way as we see our first team eliminated.
And Third Impact, who were in that earlier fight as well, they are down in that bottom 5. They certainly needed to be able to survive here, but they've only been able to walk away with 1 member. Jazz is alive. He does have at least 1 of the banners, so he could potentially make this 2 if he can get away and get the respawn, but he might make himself known to the rest of the map, and then they could be pushed. And if Third Impact fall here, they would be relegated. They wouldn't be able to get enough points to get out. A Kraber is there available if North would like to use it. North certainly have shown what they're made of in today's games. I'm really impressed with them. I think the biggest question from me after watching Week 1's games was, how are the teams coming from Bravo Division going to affect everything? And North have definitely changed how this lobby has been, because they have just been able to rotate so perfectly, been able to pinpoint where these circles are going to be finishing, and just being a real nuisance to everyone else. And that is another member of Third Impact eliminated, so the respawn came through, but Zeki goes straight back down. leaving just one member of Third Impact, and it is do or die for that last remaining member. Has to survive, otherwise they're going to be out of the tournament. Sorry, out of today's games, and they will be relegated into the Bravo division.
Yeah, I think it was Jazz who's going to be that last man to try and survive again for Finalized. That was a free KP, essentially, as the respawn did come in, and you can see there the last player alive for Third Impact, and it's so vital that gets enough points on the board to try and scrape out a place in the Alpha Division for next week, where they can try and come back stronger. For Bodyguards as well, just one player alive for them. It's going to be Phoenix, who's trying to play some time here and hope that nobody spots him as they come over the horizon, but 19 squads still remaining. 51 players, though, means there's lots of partial teams at the moment still running around Kings Canyon, so battles have been occurring, but no real big team wipe, so to speak of, as we jump over to the point of view of Alliance.
Alliance switching compositions as well. They've got a Revenant now. Of course, they were running Caustic a little bit earlier on, but they seem to have gone for something a little bit more aggressive for this match number 6, and whilst they're not really in the talking points for either topping this group or getting relegated, they still need to be picking up points when they're thinking of the bigger picture. They're thinking of qualifying for those finals. But we'll see how this composition goes for the likes of Alliance. But I'm sure they're more than capable of utilizing a Revenant as well. And actually, I'm quite excited to see what Alliance have to offer with a slightly more aggressive composition. As we move over to Pepega Gibbo, see them scouting and surveying the map to see if they can look for their next prey. They just seem to be moving across the map from team to team every time we go on board with them, no matter what map it is, whether it be World's Edge or Kings Canyon. I love this squad. I love the way they play Apex, and I'm sure they are going to be a team that is going to be a real threat, not just in this week's games, but in weeks to come as well.
12 seconds left on this ring. So we're going to see round 1 close. Only one team dropping, as we mentioned, but plenty of partial teams have lost a player and not been able to get that respawn off. So it's going to be difficult for those teams to make that rotation and traverse across Kings Canyon here towards that next circle. One of those teams, BDS Esports, trying to do exactly that. Doesn't have the greatest of armor to work with as well, but does have 2 Evo shields, so the opportunity to lay down some damage for them and just play the edge of circle. It looks like they're actually going to swap one of those out for that standard blue armor to make sure that they've at least got something to work with should they come under fire. But this is a tough rotation for them. Moving their way across the salvage, it's a tough place to sort of move here with so many open spaces that you can be shot from.
It is, and the thing is they have to play with such fear because they are in 15th position. They are the team that is okay at the moment, but they're only 4 points ahead of the likes of Vibin, 6 ahead of Third Impact, so they'll be keeping a keen eye on those that are eliminated. Nasky, Strafe and Dow are not going to be in contention for the relegation, so it's not too big a loss that they've gone down. But a team like Major Pushers maybe could fall into the relegation zone if teams below them are to be successful, and they've lost one. Gambit are getting aggressive, some decent wingman shots coming out. Cleve will be the first one to fall, and it's whether Gambit are going to hunt this one down. Leo is going to get aggressive with the Pathfinder, is getting fleshed there. 15 and 15 isn't quite enough, but I think Hideki was able to clean it up. So there's just going to be one member remaining there. Mady also falls as SJP2 are getting aggressive onto a team. It's going to be Triumph versus SJP2 elsewhere, but it's going to be Gambit who win this engagement and pick up a couple of kill points.
Still no full team wipe, though, and that's kind of been the story so far. A lot of single players managing to get away, and here's another partial team, but only momentarily, as Denzi will be brought back into the game here by his teammates, and the Wraith Portal providing enough cover for him to just shoulder peek there and look for some scout shots to back off any teams who will be pushing, and it's Triumph who are the other team on the end of this fight around the airbase area. Around 30 seconds left until we are going to see movement from this ring. And I'm interested to see where this one pulls down. I think a lot of teams aren't quite convinced where it's pulling once again and kind of just hedging their bets a little bit on where it's going to go.
Yeah, I think for the previous game, the majority had a good feeling there was going to be in airbase as we get double rat cam. Yes, this is what we love. The improvements. We had the tri-cam earlier. We've got double rat cam now. I mean, things just get better and better here at GLL, and I'm loving it. Who has the better rat position, though? That's going to be the real question, Mark, Pathfinder or Wraith?
I think it depends on what team can get the better placement and what does it mean for their survival here in the Alpha Division. Alliance, they managed to push in onto BDS, and for BDS, that's really, really bad news. Losing players. Again, they didn't manage to get eliminated, though, so there is still one player alive, and Alliance picking up some KP along the way, and it's going to be QT Sati, who is that last man alive. 18 seconds left, as you see. The ring is rotating in behind him, so he's going to be forced to move forward here through the open. He has to kind of look to the heavens here and hope that there's not going to be anyone who's in front of him watching that ring, and decides to take a little bit of damage to try and avoid those shots coming in. You can see here he's going to try and play for those banners and get his teammates back in the game. Uses the grapple to get back to those banners, but getting a respawn at this point is going to be tough to do.
Yeah, but maybe they feel like he can get away with this one and just slowly be forgotten about if he's in the ring for a decent amount of time. Certainly BDS in a really sticky situation. If they are eliminated, they are on the verge of being relegated if any of those 5 teams have a somewhat mediocre game, let alone a good game, because there are teams like Vibin and Third Impact who are very close, but so many teams with just one member left that are just fighting for their lives in the alpha lobby right now, and it's just going to be a case of who can rotate the best, who can hide the best, and maybe who can get the luckiest and not get caught by any of these aggressive squads. Speaking of aggressive teams, well, Flavor of the Month, they were so aggressive in week 1. They haven't been able to find the same aggression in week 2, but at least in the previous game they did enough to keep them, you'd think, in this alpha lobby for another week. Phoenix goes down, so that is going to be another team eliminated, and then we're going to be down to just the 18. It was Gambit who were able to spot out our first rat of the lobby, and they'll get those kill points.
Yeah, well played here by Flavor of the Month as well. You can see that rotation is tough away from those bones. However, they managed to use that Gibraltar ultimate to just buy them enough time to move up and push that team back. And now Alliance, they're trying to move up themselves, and IPN hits some big shots with the Mastiff there as they take down Papega Gibbo. So Alliance finally get a little bit of revenge on the team that's taken them down twice so far here in week number 2 to get some KP on the board. North still in a pretty commanding position here as well, as they look over to Gauntlet, and it looks again like it's going to be pulling into a very similar position that we saw in our previous game, Dan. It might be moving maybe towards that slightly more southern runway that we saw from before, but all players postured up around airbase at the moment, and those teams who have been here, and North are one of those teams who know it very well from that last game, they're going to be pretty happy with things.
Yeah, ever so slightly more south, I would have thought, this final circle, and a couple of teams would have predicted that. Maybe there was a chance it was going to be towards Gauntlet, but those teams that have been able to situate themselves well right here, like North, who again, their positioning has just been so good. And I mean, when we look at the dominance of other teams throughout Apex, like TSM, for example, and I don't want to harp on too much about them because I know they're spoke about so much, but it was their positioning, their circle placements, their ability to take control of the power points on the map that really had them dominate Apex esports. And North have shown something very similar here in today's GLL Masters, and I really think that they are a team that could be real threats throughout the rest of this tournament. Well, we're on board with Vibin, though. They are currently in 16th spot. A team that above them, BDS, and BDS have been able to get their members up, Mark. We were saying it was going to be a little bit risky.
Time we look at BDS, they have a different amount of players alive, and it's a different player every time. I'm not quite sure how they're doing it, but it's working for BDS at the moment.
It is, but Alliance down to just 2. It was Flavor of the Month Pierre taking down one of those members. But it's all well and good seeing these teams that are quite high up on the leaderboard be eliminated from the lobby, Mark, but it's the teams lower down that we need to be seeing eliminated, so those who are in the relegation zone can actually breathe a little bit, a sigh of relief perhaps. They might be able to get through. There's a huge stick by Hackies. Now he can get aggressive and push through with his teammate. Taylor goes down. We're down to 17 squads. IPN is going to get aggressive as well, and they should be able to finish this one off, but the Gibby bubble is going to give him a little bit of room to retreat, and he is just running rings and rings around the rest of the team right now, and eventually North goes down. I mean, fair enough for staying alive that long, but here comes Kramer from BDS. He has to survive here. If he goes down, they're going to be out of this lobby, and they're going to be into the Bravo division, so this is not a good situation to be in.
Somehow, BDS have managed to get out of here again. I don't know how they keep doing this, but they keep doing it. So they get the knock, but he manages to get away. So BDS down to 1 player again. Looking at the kill feed as well. Now only 15 squads remaining, so we have lost a few players here in the last few moments. But IPN is going to be back in the game, back on the Revenant as well, and he's going to be able to get back up to a full complement of health as well as he pops this shield battery. But for Alliance, it looks like Vaves might have unfortunately disconnected. Hopefully they can get him back in the game. But Luminosity, yeah, currently set up at the moment just to the west of Airbase. As we're now going to see Pathfinder moving in. And I think that's a solo Pathfinder as well on the right-hand side of your screen that's trying to rat up a few placement points out himself. Luminosity Gaming can have a difficult rotation in here. You see they've got to move across open ground. They've got to move up to high ground from low ground as well. So this is going to be a tough move for them to make.
It is going to be a tough move, and one of those 5 squads that were eliminated were in contention for the relegation as well. So next time that team tracker comes up, I'll give you a bit more of an idea of where we're looking at in terms of these bottom 5. But at the moment, we're looking at teams that are contesting the top of the lobby, really. We've had a couple of big names eliminated. Pega Gibbo, for example, I wouldn't have expected to go down. LG have just had a member knocked by SJP2 as well, as the circle is getting smaller and smaller. 20 seconds until Ring 4 is going to be closing, and the southern runway has been taken by Finalized. They put themselves in such a fantastic spot here for the rest of the game. It's just going to be where this next circle goes. Do they have to move much, or have they got this slap bam perfect? One more team has been eliminated. I think it might have been Alliance. They go down. Vibin, they are a team with their backs against the wall at the moment. They need to survive. They've been able to get into the circle, but have they been spotted? Looks like they might just use potentially a little bit of a silence just in case anyone was going to be near them, but looks like they're okay, Mark.
Yeah, they're going to be able to survive here for just a few more moments. 12 squads remaining, though, and Alliance have been taken down, I believe, finally. And now it's going to be up to Hardeki here to try and win this fight. Last player alive here for Gambit Esports. Going to pop that med kit and try and hold that angle so that player isn't going to be able to push him. A minute left on zone number 5 here, and dead inside another team who are in a pretty good position here. Got a full complement of players, and they're going to be burning so much damage onto that team that's behind them as well, and that's just going to be the indication to push. Easy shots here, massive shots are beautiful here from Stanny. He'll take them down, and that'll be KP going to dead inside. A clean sweep across the board.
Yeah, we saw Team Elitist eliminated as well. They were in 19th, so they're probably going to be relegated at this point. I mean, almost definitely relegated at this point, but I'll give some hope for fans around the world. But yeah, we'll be realistic here. I think they're going to be relegated. Vibin as well were also taken down, so that's not going to be good for them. They're probably going to be relegated at this point. BDS, is there anyone still remaining from that squad? That's what I want to know, because they were certainly ratting their way, as Alliance are still alive. Hakis is the last remaining player. He has done pretty well, and the kill leaders at the moment are Alliance. So 5 kills for Haki, so at least he's picking up a decent amount of kill points. But this is quite the rat position. When we talk about rat cam,
that's the sewers. That is the sewers, is what that is. That is as ratty as you can possibly get, and I'm sure that Imperial Hal will be very happy to see a position just like that if he's tuning in now. But for Finalized, they are the team who can control the pace of this game. They have the advantage as far as positioning is concerned, right deep into that next circle as well. But OS taken down. One of their players, Mistral, is going to go down by Tashin as well. So Tashin doing some work again for North. And I think there's actually a player with the Kraber on North as well, and that's going to be Mandy. So these players who are going to be rotating out now, who are set up behind these boxes, need to keep themselves out of the line of sight of that Kraber, because one big shot here from Mandy really could open things up for North.
Yeah, he does have his sight lines there, but he is being patient with his bullets. Only has 6 to work with. He probably wants a grenade from his team just to try and force them out. He's got an arc star of his own. Now he looks right. Can he get a shot onto this Gibby? But he's just being so patient. He knows he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to shoot them just yet unless he gets that shot that's available. Is he going to spot down this player? He does see him. Oh, and this is bad news. He can see the gun. He's going to try and get an angle. Does need to be careful.
No! Oh my God!
Goodness, he's a Pathfinder. Otherwise, that could have been so detrimental. But he does have the sight lines, and this should be a kill if he can just see him. But how frustrating to see the gun, to see the player, but not quite been able to get the shot off.
He had a heart attack there when he fell off. But Mandy knew what he was doing, trying to get that angle up on top as well. He will get the 152, and it's going to force the last player here on Alliance to hit the queue, but that's only going to delay the inevitable. You would feel manages to get the Phoenix kit off as well. He's managed to sneak out of sight once again, and Hacky is here. And if he can manage to stay out of the line of sight of that Kraber for a few more moments, well, he can pretty much guarantee himself a top 3 position.
He should finish in 2nd place, realistically, unless the Pathfinder does something nuts. Unless Mandy just, like, goes out for vengeance here and just says, no, actually, I want to make sure I can try and take it.
Grapple back on.
go for the
I want
no-scope
to see.
with Kraber. Like, imagine, it would be insane. But still, 6 squads left as round 6 now is closing, and Andy certainly has seen a couple of players. Bombardments will come through. Tags one for 152, and that is his indication to get aggressive, as North are just going to be flying above everyone else on the map right now. They will drop, goes for the no-scope. There is going to be a couple of players down. SJPT get eliminated. Triumph to go down. That's a third, and this is just carnage from North. They're doing it again, Mark.
Yeah, they managed to get the armor swap off again, and RPR, although he's going to be taken down, will stay alive and will be able to get the res. But just as I say that, Finalized are now making their move. They get some shots in here, and they will take down North inside the dome here. So you can see only 2 squads remaining now, and I tell you what, I can tell you exactly where the last player is. The only problem is, without a Pathfinder or any way to get him out, he's not going to be able to get out, but he does get taken down finally. And speaking of finally, Finalized are going to be the team who take our final game here on Kings Canyon on week 2 of action here for the JLL Masters. Congratulations to them. But we got to love that rat spot, right? That's the talking point here.
I mean, it's just filthy. Like, it always feels like it shouldn't be allowed, but the fact he's been able to work his way down there and just recognize that you have to rat your way into some situations. He was unfortunate to be spotted out, because if he wasn't spotted by that Kraber, he might have been able to, well, to be fair, he got top 2. He was always going to get top 2. He was never winning that game, so it didn't really matter if the last team knew where he was or not. But an interesting end, a very exciting end. I love to see just like jam-packed finishes like that, and rat spots that win points and get you placement points. As we take back a look at some of these highlights from match number 6 of today. It was our final match, our 3rd match on Kings Canyon. We did have 3 on World Edge previously, but it's all going to be down to who ratted better, because so many of these teams that were in the bottom 5 mark found themselves on just 1 member going into the last 10, and it's who was able to pick up those points to potentially get them out of that relegation zone.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see how those final standings are, and if any of those teams did manage to somehow or other put together enough points to stay involved in the Alpha Division action next week, or if they're going to have to fight their way back through that Bravo Division. But Alliance here, this play from Hakish was absolutely insane. He managed to get the stick, got the finish, and then pushed in on this Gibraltar as well, essentially hitting the 1v2 in that situation. But wonderful stuff from him, and I think we're just going to enjoy the little bit of free cam work here from the Pathfinder as well. But Dead Inside, this push as well, Dan, clean as you like.
Yeah, I think this was on Vibin as well, and Dead Inside, who were in 14th, they needed kill points just to stay above that threshold, and to eliminate a team that was in 16th is going to be massive for them. This was the moment where the world of my bottom, as he jumped off the map, but thankfully was a Pathfinder, and then we had the closing moments where North did so well with the push, but Finalized were just in prime position, and then little old Rat Boy was found eventually, but fair play to him and hats off to him. If I was wearing a hat, Mark, I won't force you to do it, don't worry. But picked up a 2nd place, and that was a really, really fun game to watch.
Yeah, really, really interesting game. And again, one of those zones that really did pull hard towards the west side of Kings Canyon. You have to feel a little bit maybe on Kings Canyon there for some of those teams that were dropping on the west side of the map, because we had 2 pretty central, 1 central essentially encircle there, and we had 2 that were right over that west side of Kings Canyon. So a little bit of a tough one there for those final games for those teams who were dropping on the east side of the map. But, you know, sometimes that's how it is, right? That's how it is. You just got to deal with the cards you got.
That's battle royales. That's circles. Like, sometimes they go against you, and that's why you have to sometimes have drop locations that maybe are a little bit more central, so you don't end up on that kind of receiving end of constant one-way shifts. As we can take a look back at the highlights from games earlier today. This was game 4, our first one on Kings Canyon, and this is where we set the tone for Kings Canyon. Really, we didn't know if it was going to be a little bit more fast-paced or whether it was going to be slightly slower like we saw on World's Edge, but it was a little bit slower. Even though there was a lot of early engagements and there was a couple of contesting drop spots, it did slow down and we got to a very compact circle late game, but in the end we saw a pretty huge battle from teams that maybe hadn't been performing well in previous games but were able to show up in game number 4.
So this is going to be the push here that we did see coming in from Papega Gibbo as well. They absolutely wiped the floor in this particular game with a few teams, and these shots here stick out in the memory coming in from Matafe. Pops around this corner and bang, 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 breaks the armor, but I don't think he managed to get the finish at that point. It came down to these last few moments as we saw our first squirrel of the broadcast up in that tree, but it was LG, I believe, in this game who managed to hold things together towards the end of the game for the win.
Yeah, LG just were in prime position, they played it perfectly, and they just had the gun skill to eke out the victory in the end, and Game 4 went to them. And LG, I think, are going to be another team that we're going to be talking about quite a lot throughout this tournament. I mean, we knew they had the potential, like you said, like a slightly different iteration of the squad ever since we saw them first burst onto the scene in Poland, but after some disappointing results, they seem to have found their footing a little bit here in the GLL Masters Summer, and I'm pretty happy to see that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly going to be a powerhouse team moving forward once they get a few more tournaments under their belt and a little bit more time in the, practicing the strategies and how they want to approach the game. Then certainly going to be a dangerous team to watch out for. But we do also have our highlights ready for game number 5 as well, if you're just joining us. And unfortunately, you've missed the live action, but we're keeping you up to date with all these highlights, so don't worry too much. And this was once again North picking up yet another win here, Dan, and they really have been the standout story for today.
Yeah, this was our first game where it was a heavy shift towards airbase, one of those heavy western circles that you speak of. Very easy to predict, a lot of finishes that have been that way, and we saw the majority of the lobby get into airbase within the first ring. And it was a very difficult time for those who were rotating in late, and that's why we saw a couple of eliminations from teams that were on that eastern side or even on the southern side of the circle. But it was North who eventually found their 3rd victory of the day. We had this kind of a runway off where I started discussing the length of the runways, but in the end it didn't matter because North were able to get their way on top of this aircraft, and they had the high ground. They were able to take out the team that were below them, get the victory, found their 3rd victory of the day. And honestly, after moving from the Bravo division, there was of course going to be questions about why they were in the Bravo division after they've been able to pick up 3 victories, but I'm very impressed with how North have played today.
Yeah, superb stuff coming in from North, and they kept that consistency going as we headed into our final game as well. They managed to find their way into those final moments. We'll bring you the highlights of that as soon as we have them available. But I mean, does that the performance of North today, surely that's got to breed confidence to some of those teams in the Bravo lobby as well, who are looking to fight back into this Alpha lobby, right?
Yes, I mean, when you see a team like North dominate, you can say, okay, well, maybe we got knocked down into the Bravo lobby, or maybe we haven't got into the Alpha lobby in the first 2 weeks, but we're here in week 3. We can actually do something here. We can do some damage. Like, it just shows that this lobby is there for the taking. Like, yes, everyone is just so good, and we are seeing so many similarly matched teams that you can find yourself, if you rotate accordingly and you find yourself knowing where that circle is and you can plan to try and position yourself with some high ground, you can win games. North have done so well today to get into those final circles and to have the prime position, but also on the side of Papega Gibbo, they forced their way into those situations. When they saw another team and correctly guessed the circle, they took that spot off them, and that's why they were able to succeed in game number 4. But then this was match number 6 then, the Battle of the Rats, where a lot of the teams that were in the bottom 5 lost players early on, and they were just desperately trying to survive for placement points. Dead Inside, who were just on the threshold, had a really good push at the end to take out those on Vibin and probably relegate them, to be honest. And then we had the best rat spot of the day, the best rat cam of the day, as well as, well, that happened, and that scared us both.
We did see North again being involved in that top 5 conversation. Like I managed to get into that top 4, I should say, as they did win that fight. But it was finalised too. Had a little bit of shaky start towards the start of the day, but towards the end of the day certainly improved their position. And here we go. After that game, they will be improving it even further. They picked up 38 points on their way towards that first place finish. North in second place as well, 36 points for them. Alliance, much better performance, even though it was the solo player at the end who managed to hold things together. But down at the bottom, Dan, I mean, talk us through it.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. I mean, Bodyguards and Elitist, they're going to be eliminated. BDS were in 15th, and they've only picked up 2 points, so I think they're probably going to fall as well alongside FigVam. But it's going to be Third Impact and Vibin are going to be the two that are potentially leaping out of the relegation zone. I know I said Vibin might have been eliminated, but I hadn't realized how many kills they were able to pick up. Double points for kills, so they've been able to get 10 points total, which should, I say should, lift them out of the relegation zone. I'm very excited to see how this overall leaderboard looks like. I'm going to be focusing on this relegation zone. There you go. Vibin just managed to pip BDS.
4 points.
But, oh my goodness, that's so close, and it just is such a shame for the likes of Third Impact, who had such a good week 1. They fall alongside FigVam, Elitist, and Bodyguards.
Yeah, commiserations to those teams. They will find their way into the Bravo division for next week. At the other end of the table, though, North, I mean, it's only the real story we can talk about here. 180 points total, 45 kills across the 5 games as well. The 6 games, excuse me, and 90 placement points. They really have been the standout performers here in week number 2 in the EMEA region. After coming, as we said, 1,000 times now from that Bravo division in week number 1. Papega Gibbo, they're in second place with 150 points. Gambit looking pretty good. Triumph and Alliance in that top 5 once again. But Alliance just missing that real big pop-up performance maybe we expect to see from them in one of those games to really push them into that top 3 conversation.
Well, we can take a look at Bravo Division and who are the 5 teams who are going to be getting into the Alpha. Fenerbahce comes straight back up after being demoted last week. You still have the chance, Mark, of saying your favorite player name. Cooler Esports, Exorcism, FlexCam, and Team Purge. So 4 new teams to the Alpha Division. Unfortunately, for the likes of YDN, who got relegated last week, they weren't able to get enough. Lava City Boys as well. And looking all the way down 13th for Weigers. They missed out on the Alpha Division by 3 points last week, but they are just not able to get even close in week number 2, so they'll have a 3rd week in the Bravo Division.
And for those 5 teams, I'm sure they'll be looking on at what North have managed to achieve today. Of course, North, one of the powerhouse teams in the EMEA region, and almost a surprise that they were down in that Bravo division to start things off. But this is the total leaderboard after week 2's action has been done and dusted, and Papega Gibbo are leading the way at the moment. 248 points on the board, but a monster performance from North. Of course, just remember, they weren't getting double points last week in the Bravo division. They're now in second place on 233 points. That is a monster week coming in for this roster.
Yeah, a team like SJP2, who got promoted as well from the Bravo division, they've been able to find themselves all the way up to 9th. When you look down to like 16th to 20th, so teams that have also been in the Bravo division, I mean, Fenerbahce are still up in 17th, so they're still in a decent spot coming back into the Alpha division, but they'll need a better performance than they had in week 1. Vibin just about staying alive in Alpha after being promoted as well. They really struggled having the Revenant for the majority of the day, but they were able to stick with it and in that final game pick up enough points to just climb out. But the overall leaderboard is certainly looking tasty, and a lot of the teams that we expected to be at the top are starting to put themselves within a little bit of, well, maybe out of reach of some of the teams that have been dipping in between Alpha and Bravo.
Yeah, massive performance though from North. Even though they're not top of the leaderboards, they are comfortably in second place and just a few points behind Papega Gibbo, who are leading the way at the moment. So they're looking like the team to beat at the moment, Dan, the most consistent team across 12 matches that we've had so far. And it seems like their playstyle of not rotating early and playing that edge of zone and playing for those kills is proving most effective so far.
Just sheer aggression and confidence in your gun skill, and I love to see it. I love that there is a variety in playstyles throughout these teams, because otherwise it could be a little bit stale if everyone is just kind of waiting for someone else to do something. So having at least one team that is going to be that initiator that says, you know what, screw it. You guys can play how you want, and you can kind of hide away, and you can just be rats all you want, but we're going to look for those kills. We're going to get up in your face. We're going to take those prime positions off you. That's what I love, that Papega Gibbo offer that difference in the end game. They're not just going to concede the high ground to someone. They say, we either take that and we win the game, or you kill us in a fight and you win the game. And that makes it far more interesting going into those last circles.
Yeah, a little bit of a quieter week for Nasky Strafendale. Definitely not one to be disappointed in, but after their performance in week number 1, things just seem to have settled down a little bit. And we talk about the meta shift and how that patch, the most recent patch, really kind of shuffled things up a little bit with legend selection and, you know, how teams were putting their compositions together. But you have to say, we have definitely returned to a more traditional playstyle here, with Watson really being reintroduced solidly into most teams' lineups.
But remember, there is still North America to come up in, what, a few hours? No surprise for you this time. You're not going to be casting North America today. You can sleep at a normal time, like normal people. Instead, you can hand off to someone else. But we'll see whether North America is going to be a little bit different in terms of the meta and what they have to offer. Are they going to go for, like, kind of more of the Revenant and Crypto style, or are we going to see them also transition back to the more traditional style?
All right, then that's going to do it all for today's action. Thank you all for joining us in week 2 of the GLL Masters Summer. Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you all for watching at home, and we will see you back on week number 3.